Hello everyone, this is Fanfic Audiobook. Here you find original fan made audio stories.
One Piece. Incredible comprehension. One glance and the ultimate move is maxed out. Part 1. Ding. Your observation haki sensed the chaotic aura of Hashinosu, automatically deducing and evolving, proficiency plus 5%. Ding. Your basic swordsmanship craves battle and has entered a state of deep meditation, currently reaching a bottleneck. Ding. After running through the night, your armament haki successfully broke through to the embryonic stage of Ruo. Emission progress 1%. Listening to the continuous prompt tones in his mind, Rain flipped out of bed and clenched his fists tightly. 3 days ago, he accidentally time traveled into the pirate world, becoming a low-level probationary crew member of the Rocks Pirates. Accompanying his transmigration was a system called heaven-defying comprehension. This thing was truly heaven-defying. Any move could be instantly comprehended at just a glance. Even more terrifyingly, the comprehended skills would automatically cultivate inside his body round the clock, and even autonomously deduce and evolve into higher tier forms based on the surrounding environment. On this island of Hashinosu known as the Pirate Paradise, the survival of the fittest was the only truth. In order to select the strongest subordinates, Rocks allowed the crew members to kill each other. If one wanted to survive, one had to be stronger than everyone else. Open panel. Rain chanted silently in his heart. Host. Rain. Observation haki. Proficient 15%. Armament haki. Ruo embryonic stage 1%. Basic swordsmanship. Perfection upgradable. Although the data was simple, for a rookie who had just boarded the ship 3 days ago, it could already be considered a rebirth. Especially armament haki, being able to achieve the emitted Ruo was a threshold that even many great pirates with bounties over 100 million could not touch. Rain grabbed the rusty iron sword on the table and pushed open the wooden door. Having just taken half a step out, a strong gust of wind suddenly struck from the side. Rookie, hand over anything valuable on you. A fierce-looking one-eyed pirate raised a machete and slashed viciously at Rain's neck. On this island, veteran crew members hunting down probationary rookies was commonplace. Rain didn't even turn his head. Observation haki had already anticipated the attack trajectory in advance. His feet shifted, his body dodging the blade at an incredible angle, while his right hand casually raised the iron sword. Bang! The hilt of the sword slammed heavily against the one-eyed pirate's chin. Accompanied by the sound of bone cracking, the one-eyed pirate's eyes rolled back, and his massive body crashed to the ground. Too slow. Rain stepped over the corpse on the ground and strode toward Skull Rock in the center of the island. Today there was an important rookie training session. Recently, the pressure from the world government was getting stronger and stronger, so Rocks specially arranged an executive to guide this batch of probationary crew members in order to expand combat power. A few minutes later, Rain arrived at the wide Skull Rock Plaza. The open space was already crowded with hundreds of fierce-looking rookies. There were also quite a few official crew members watching the commotion around. Rain found a secluded corner and stood still. The surrounding rookies were holding weapons, gesticulating while sweating profusely, their mouths full of complaints. We simply can't learn it. Captain Newgate's exertion technique is too bizarre. Nonsense. Having to concentrate power on a single point while coordinating with the weapon's vibration is simply anti-human. I can't even hold my blade steady, let alone swing out a slash. Listening to everyone's discussions, Rain's eyes flickered slightly. 3 days ago, Whitebeard Edward Newgate personally stepped forward to demonstrate his unique sword technique to all the rookies. Factions were rampant within the Rocks Pirates, and Whitebeard's move was obviously also to select good talents among the probationary crew members to expand his own division. At this moment, heavy footsteps came from the front of the plaza. Bang! A huge pole blade slammed heavily into the ground, instantly shattering the surface. An invisible wave of air swept across the entire area, and all the noisy sounds came to an abrupt halt. Golden wavy long hair, highly symbolic crescent-shaped mustache, and a towering, robust body like an iron tower. Edward Newgate. The future 4 emperors, now a core executive of the Rocks Pirates. This is the last demonstration. Whitebeard looked down condescendingly at the entire audience, his voice like a grand bell. My sword technique combines the power of vibration and the application of Haki. To learn it, both talent and hard practice are indispensable. Without wasting any more words, he drew the supreme grade Wazamano, Murakumogiri, with one hand. At this moment, Rain immediately stared intently at Whitebeard's movements with full concentration. Whitebeard gripped the hilt with both hands and slashed forward fiercely. A visible white halo circulated on the blade, as if the air in the entire space was forcefully torn apart. Boom! The sea ahead was slashed across the air into a huge abyss, waves rolling and unable to heal for a long time. Not only the power of the tremor fruit, but this also mixed in the release of top-tier armament Haki. Everyone present was so frightened that their whole bodies trembled and cold sweat poured down. Yet for Rain at the back of the crowd, his mind instantly exploded with commotion. Ding! You observed a top-tier powerhouse make a move, heaven-defying comprehension triggered. Congratulations, host. You instantly comprehended Murakumo/advanced. Ding! Your system sensed the oppressive aura of the top-tier powerhouse, successfully activating hidden potential. Congratulations, host. You have awakened Conqueror's Haki. Rain's eyes suddenly lit up, the power within his body surging out like a volcano about to erupt. The three colors of Haki, all gathered. Rain forcibly suppressed the boiling Haoshoku within his body, thoroughly retracting it. Now was not the time to expose his trump card. In a place like the Rocks Pirates where lunatics clustered, the deeper one hid one's trump cards, the longer one lived. At the front of the plaza, Whitebeard finished his demonstration, flicked one hand, and thrust Murakumogiri into the ground. I have already taught the moves, how much you can comprehend depends on yourselves. Whitebeard strode over to a large wooden box nearby and sat down, his thick arms propping up his chin. Now, show it to me. Clearly, this was a face-to-face actual combat assessment. Whitebeard wanted to pick a few good talents from this batch of rookies. The crowd immediately dispersed, and the rookies each found an open space, holding weapons and clumsily gesticulating. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people couldn't even hold their blades steady, and the actions they swung out were limp and devoid of any imposing momentum. Rain stood at the edge of the crowd, quietly watching this group of people practice blindly. Ding! Your comprehension despises the clumsy actions of the surrounding people, and to wash your eyes, it automatically performs reverse deduction. Murakumo/proficiency increased to 15%. Listening to the prompt in his mind, Rain couldn't help but chuckle dumbly. Can watching others make mistakes also increase proficiency? This system of his was really cute in its pickiness. However, just staring blankly all the time was no solution either. Rain gripped the iron sword in his hand and walked up to a waist-high giant reef. Taking a deep breath, every frame of Whitebeard's strike from just now automatically surfaced in his mind. Muscle memory instantly awakened, and the Ruo-level armament Haki quietly wrapped around the iron sword, forming an invisible film of destruction. He raised his hand and swung his sword. Murakumo/. Bang! The rusty iron sword struck squarely against the surface of the reef. The next second, a dull rumble echoed from deep within the rock. Immediately following with a loud crack, the entire boulder completely shattered from the inside, disintegrating into a pile of powder. This trace of vibrational destruction was virtually identical to the phenomenon Whitebeard had just produced. Hiss! The entire venue fell into dead silence in an instant. All the newcomers stared dead at Ren as if they had seen a ghost, their jaws nearly hitting the ground. Sitting on a wooden crate, Whitebeard abruptly stood up, an intense glint shooting from his eyes. Brat! Whitebeard took wide strides, towering like an iron pillar as he walked up to Ren. You learned it. Watching your demonstration just now, I managed to grasp a bit of the basics, Ren replied calmly. The recruits nearby nearly coughed up blood hearing that. Just grasping a bit of the basics was enough to shatter a giant boulder into dust with a single sword strike. Did everyone watch the same full demonstration? Swing it once more for me, Whitebeard said, his eyes filled with scrutiny. It happened too quickly just now, and being a bit far away, he hadn't clearly seen the details of how Ren exerted force. Without wasting words, Ren turned around and walked over to another, even larger boulder nearby. He raised the iron sword again, his aura completely restrained, and swung downward. Boom! The giant stone exploded with a bang, debris scattering everywhere. This time, Whitebeard saw it with complete clarity. Not only was the force exertion technique flawlessly replicated, but the kid's blade was also imbued with the flowing external emission of advanced armament Haki. In just 3 days, he had not only learned his signature technique, but had even mastered Ruo. Gurararara. Whitebeard threw his head back and laughed loudly, his voice booming like a great bell and making the eardrums of those around ache. A genius. An unprecedented genius. Brat, what's your name? Ren. Ren, after boot camp ends, report directly to my division. As long as you join my crew, you are my, Edward Newgate's, family. If anyone dares touch you, I'll slaughter them. Whitebeard extended an olive branch right in front of everyone. On this dog-eat-dog island of Hashinosu, Whitebeard's division was a rare safe haven. He valued companions above all else and was fiercely protective of his own. Being able to join Whitebeard's ranks was equivalent to gaining a top-tier protective talisman. No problem, Captain Newgate, Ren readily agreed. Having received a satisfactory answer, Whitebeard was in high spirits. He clapped Ren on the shoulder, picked up Murakumogiri, and led his subordinates away from the square. As soon as Whitebeard left, the looks the surrounding recruits gave Ren completely changed. Jealousy, envy, and undisguised, intense murderous intent filled their eyes. Everyone was just a low-level apprentice who could die at any moment. What right did he have to soar into the sky and become a core crew member under an officer? Ren simply ignored these hostile glares. If anyone dared to come looking for death, he didn't mind feeding them to the Sea Kings. His stomach let out a rumble, he hadn't eaten a proper meal since transmigrating here. Holding his iron sword, Ren turned and walked toward the coastline behind the island, intending to catch some seafood to grill. Meanwhile, the news that Ren had mastered Whitebeard's signature technique in 3 days and had been exceptionally recruited on the spot spread like wildfire across the entire pirate paradise. Deep inside Skull Rock, within a luxurious officer's hall, a man with long golden hair, resembling a wild lion, sat on the sofa with his legs crossed, chomping on a cigar. Mastered Newgate's Murakumo slash with just a single glance. Golden Lion Shiki exhaled a thick puff of smoke, his eyes narrowing slightly. As one of the sea's top swordsmen, Shiki understood the immense caliber of Whitebeard's swordsmanship better than anyone. Interesting. Shiki casually drew the 2 famous swords at his waist, Sakuraden, and Kogarashi, a wild grin spreading across his lips. Go find out where he is. I'm going to meet this newcomer myself. In the center of Hashinosu Island, inside the massive skull-shaped rock, lay layers of well-arranged structures. Inside one of the spacious halls, Wang Ji stood by the window, gazing at the distant harbor. Silver Axe sat in a chair, silently wiping the giant axe in his hands. Captain John pushed the door open holding half a bottle of rum and shouted loudly, Wang Ji, Silver Axe, have you heard? Something rare happened on the island. What happened? Wang Ji turned back and asked. John took a heavy swig of rum. There's an apprentice named Ren who took 3 days to master Newgate's blade technique. Heard he even unleashed the Murakumo slash, and Newgate recruited him into his division on the spot. Wang Ji and Silver Axe exchanged glances, neither taking it seriously. Murakumo slash. Don't joke around, Silver Axe shook his head. Newgate's moves incorporate the force from his tremor fruit, no one can learn it easily. Even if we tried, we couldn't master it in 3 days. It's spreading among the apprentices in vivid detail, so who knows? John shrugged. Wang Ji narrowed his eyes. If it's true, that kid is definitely an anomaly. Captain Rox has been nowhere to be seen lately, reportedly planning something earth-shattering. Gaining a monster rookie would be a good thing for the entire crew. At the same time, Ren's name quickly reached the ears of many big shots. Charlotte Linlin, who was frantically devouring sweets, a young Kaido gulping down booze, and Buckingham Stussy, who was gathering intel in the shadows, all took note of the name Ren. The scene shifted to the desolate coastline behind the island. Ren sat on a rock, holding a makeshift fishing rod. Beside him was a campfire grilling several freshly prepped sea fish. Ding! Your observation Haki listened to the voice of the sea and entered a meditative state. Proficiency plus 10%. The prompt in his mind put Ren in a great mood. A quiet activity like fishing could actually trigger a special system state and accelerate the leveling of observation Haki. Having eaten and drunk his fill, Ren stood up. Hashinosu Island was fraught with peril, and being valued by Whitebeard would definitely attract plenty of jealous individuals. He had to seize every moment to grow stronger. He drew the iron sword at his waist, focused his mind, and began swinging it according to the memories in his head. Armament Haki coated the blade as he slashed repeatedly. Before he could even finish the routine, the system's prompt changed. Ding! Your heaven-defying comprehension senses that the host is performing inefficient physical sword swings. Feeling its dignity insulted, it refuses to cooperate. Current cultivation speed reduced by 90%. Ding! Your Murakumo slash disdains the rusty iron sword in the host's hand, feeling downgraded. It has developed a slacking attitude. Proficiency gain stopped. Holding the sword, Ren froze in place. Has this system gained sentience? He took the initiative to sweat and train, and it actually disdained the efficiency as too low. Even the broken weapon in his hand was being looked down upon. Ren stabbed the iron sword into the ground with a helpless sigh. It seemed that in the future, he could only rely on watching experts use moves or AFK idling to level up, and he definitely needed to acquire a decent Mato as soon as possible. Just as Ren prepared to return to the camp to rest, his observation Haki suddenly caught several chaotic presences. Ren turned toward a pile of rocks not far away. 6 burly apprentice pirates gripping broadswords outflanked him from 3 directions, cutting off all of Ren's retreat routes. You're Ren, right? Enjoying the limelight. The lead pirate had a menacing face, his eyes dripping with thick murderous intent. Ren let out a sigh. Sure enough, trouble had come knocking. These bottom-tier pirates would do any dirty deed just to climb the ranks. He couldn't be bothered to waste words. Exerting explosive force through his legs, the ground instantly caved in. Turning into an afterimage, Ren charged directly at the front 2 men. Black armament Haki instantly wrapped around the iron sword, forming a flowing membrane. Ruo! The 2 pirates were startled and hastily raised their swords to block. Crack! The 2 fine steel broadswords were severed like paper. With a flick of Ren's wrist, the blade slashed across their throats. Blood spurted out. Before the other 4 could react, Ren was already behind them. No flashy moves, only the purest killing techniques. In a matter of seconds, 6 corpses collapsed in pools of blood. A total combat crushing. Ren took the coin pouches and slightly better weapons from them, kicking the corpses one by one into the sea to feed the fish. Having done all this, Ren leaned against a boulder, panting heavily. After all, this was his first time killing anyone in this world. Just as Ren was trying to calm his breathing. In midair, a man in a striped suit with golden hair floated quietly, taking in the entire battle. Not only has he mastered Newgate's moves, but he can even use armament Ruo with ease. Most importantly, he regained his composure so quickly after his very first kill. Golden Lion Shiki's eyes gleamed as he clenched his fists in excitement. A monster with this level of mentality and talent, I absolutely can't let him slip away. High in the air, Golden Lion Shiki looked down at Renee, and the more he looked, the more satisfied he became. Decisive in killing and extraordinarily talented, he was simply born to be a pirate king. Until Renee's breathing completely stabilized, Shiki deactivated the power of the float fruit and slowly landed on a reef. Who? Renee instantly turned his head, his observation Haki blaring frantic warnings. When he saw the blonde-haired man biting a cigar before him, his heart tightened fiercely, yet on the surface, he feigned complete defenselessness and took 2 steps back. Captain Shiki? Renee asked with a vigilant look. He had just agreed to Whitebeard moments ago, and now Golden Lion had come looking for him. Facing such a top-tier pirate, his current self definitely had no chance of winning. Kid, don't be so nervous. Shiki exhaled a mouthful of thick smoke, looking at Renee with a smile. Your movements when killing just now were very clean, I saw it all. Well done. In Hashinosu, soft-hearted people can't survive past the second day. Renee remained silent, staring at Shiki. Shiki walked forward, his tone full of temptation. Newgate has taken a fancy to you, and I appreciate you just as much. Join my division, Renee. Follow me, and we will conquer the entire world together. I will give you all the status and wealth you want. Conquer the world. Renee chuckled inwardly. This guy's ambition was certainly big enough, but unfortunately his luck wasn't great, and in the future, a ship's helm would even be stuck in his forehead. However, rejecting him just like that would definitely offend him. Renee rolled his eyes, a plan forming in his mind. He deliberately put on a skeptical expression, looking Shiki up and down. Captain Shiki, everyone says Captain Whitebeard is a candidate for the world's strongest man, and his Murakumo slash is terrifyingly powerful. I only follow true powerhouses, or you, stronger than Captain Whitebeard. Hearing this, a few blue veins instantly popped up on Shiki's forehead. What could pirates stand the least? Of course, having their strength questioned by others. Especially being compared to Whitebeard, whom he never got along with. Kid, do you doubt that my strength is not as strong as Newgate's? Shiki spat out his cigar, his temper flaring up instantly. Renee spread his hands with an innocent face. Words alone are not proof. Good. Today, I will let you open your eyes. Shiki snorted coldly, his hands gripping the two famous blades at his waist respectively Sakuraden and Kogarashi. The moment the famous blades were unsheathed, an astonishing killing intent soared into the sky, making even the surrounding air feel oppressive. You learned Newgate's moves in 3 days, and you certainly count as a genius. But my two-sword style is 10 times harder than Newgate's brute force hacking style. Shiki's face was full of arrogance, holding swords in both hands to strike a crossed stance. To completely subdue Renee, Shiki not only mobilized top-tier armament haki, but also explained it in great detail. Watch closely. This move requires absolute balance in the strength of both hands, while compressing armament haki to the absolute limit, and then cooperating with my float fruit ability to sever all obstacles ahead. What is a one-sword style worth? This is the perfect combination of my swordsmanship and devil fruit. As soon as his voice fell, Shiki's dual blades fiercely slashed forward. Lions severing waves. Boom. A huge crescent-shaped sword chi glowing with a dazzling golden yellow roared out, directly tearing apart the coastline ahead. The massive sword chi rushed into the sea, forcefully cleaving a bottomless canyon out of the dark blue sea surface. Gale winds raged, and seawater rolled to both sides, unable to close for a long time. Too strong. Looking at this heaven-opening strike, Renee's heart was indeed quite shaken. At this moment, the crisp prompt sound in his mind crazily refreshed the screen. Ding! You observed the top-tier swordsmanship lion's severing waves, felt excited, and instantly deconstructed it. Ding! Your system felt that the two-sword style was too cumbersome and overly reliant on the devil fruit, and self-optimized it into a single-handed slash version. Congratulations host. You have mastered lion's severing waves, improved single-handed version, current proficiency, 20% mastery. Listening to the system's roast, Renee almost laughed out loud. This system could not only learn, but also weed out the chaff and retain the true, directly revising the Golden Lion's ultimate move. On the sea surface, the huge waves finally subsided. Shiki turned his head and looked at Renee proudly. How is it, kid? Is my move Lion's severing waves qualified to make you follow me? If you want to learn, just join my division, and I will teach you personally. Renee nodded and said very sincerely, Captain Shiki, this move is indeed powerful. But there's no need to trouble you to teach me, I've already learned it. Ha 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 ha, consider you kid sensible. Wait, what did you say? Shiki laughed halfway, his voice stopping abruptly. He stared fixedly at Renee, as if he had heard some cosmic joke. You learned it. Stop joking. Back then, it took me a full half-year just to touch the threshold. Do you think you can learn it just by looking at it once? Renee didn't explain. He walked aside and picked up an ordinary pirate longsword from beside a corpse on the ground. Taking a deep breath, Rene held the blade with one hand. The operation route of the improved version of the slash in his mind was crystal clear, and armament hockey instantly wrapped around the blade. Draw the blade, slash. The movement was flowing like clouds and water, without any redundant postures. Severing waves. Swish. A golden half-moon-shaped sword chi burst out from Rene's hand. Although its size was much smaller than the one Shiki slashed out just now, the solidity and angle of the sword chi, and even the sharpness that tore through the air, were completely identical. The golden sword chi slashed across the sea surface, cleaving a trench tens of meters long, and then exploded into a sky full of splashes. Clatter. The half-cut cigar in Shiki's mouth dropped onto the stone, splashing a small cluster of sparks. He looked at the rolling sea surface, and then turned his head to look at the broken knife in Rene's hand, freezing in place as if struck by lightning. Really severing waves. And it was actually used with one hand. Shiki's eyes stared wide like copper bells, simply unable to believe his own eyes. The ultimate trump card he had painstakingly practiced for half a year was perfectly replicated by the intern before him after seeing it once. And he even improved it for the condition of not having dual blades. What kind of freakish monster was this? Kid. No, brother Rene. Shiki rushed over like a madman, his hands tightly grabbing Rene's shoulders, roaring with bloodshot eyes, "You must join my division. Must. I'm going to teach you all swordsmanship. Whoever dares to snatch you from me, I'll hack him to pieces." Meanwhile, at the center of Hashinosu Island, inside the giant Skull Rock building, the heaven-shaking sword chi that Shiki slashed out earlier to show off his skills erupted with extremely strong fluctuations. Wang Ji, Silver Axe, and John simultaneously stopped their actions and looked uniformly toward the rear coastline. It's Shiki's aura. Who is he fighting with? Such a big commotion. Silver Axe carried his axe, full of confusion. Let's go take a look. Hope it's not a Marine admiral sneaking onto the island. Wang Ji stood up, and the three of them immediately hurried toward the seaside. On the other side, in the camp of Whitebeard's division, a pirate underling scrambled and rushed through the gate, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Old Man Newgate. This is bad. Captain Golden Lion has blocked Rene in the back mountain. He just used an ultimate move to split the sea." Boom. Whitebeard suddenly stood up, and his violent Haoshoku haki burst through his body, filling the surrounding wooden furniture with cracks instantly. Shiki, you fool, how dare you snatch my family? Whitebeard grabbed the Murakumogiri beside him, and like an enraged demon god, sprinted toward the coastline in giant strides. On the coastline, the atmosphere was tense and ready to explode. Whitebeard held the Murakumogiri, standing before Rain like a guardian demon god, glaring furiously at Golden Lion. Newgate, are you being unreasonable? Who wouldn't want a genius like this? Shiki's cigar even dropped to the ground, and he tightly gripped his famous blade with both hands, refusing to back down an inch. Just as the two of them were about to fight, Wang Ji, Silver Axe, and John happened to arrive. After figuring out the cause and effect, Wang Ji laughed heartily. Shiki, stop joking. Even if you covet the newcomer someone else chose, there's no need to make up such a sheer fantasy. Learn your trump card just by taking a look. Who are you trying to fool? Shiki's expression sank. Dead serious, does it look like I'm joking to you? Seeing that Shiki was being serious, Silver Axe and the others put away their smiles. As captain-level officers of the same rank, they knew Shiki's inner arrogance well, and even more so that he would never lie about swordsmanship. The gazes everyone cast toward Rain instantly changed, mixed with a hint of shock. Whitebeard turned his head, his massive body casting a shadow, and asked earnestly, Rain, can you really learn it just by watching once? As long as someone is willing to teach, basically once is enough. Rain nodded, his tone very calm. Swish. The surrounding pirates watching the commotion gathered more and more, and upon hearing these words, they immediately exploded into an uproar. Everyone stared at Rain, as if looking at a monster. Is there really a human whose talent on the seas is monstrous to this degree? Silver Axe walked forward carrying a giant axe, his gaze like torches, empty words prove nothing. Since you say you can learn it at a glance, why don't we verify it on the spot? Rain was completely unfazed. How should we verify it? Watch closely, I will display my strongest move. If you can comprehend even a fraction of the basics, I'll count it as a pass. Silver Axe hoisted the giant axe onto his shoulder, his tone exuding absolute confidence. Newgate, Shiki, and Wang Ji cleared the way one after another, their gazes solemn. As fellow officers, they knew very well how difficult it was to learn Silver Axe's ultimate technique. Meanwhile, at the center of Hashinosu, deep within the massive skull rock, a wild man completely concealed in darkness suddenly opened his eyes. Top-tier observation haki instantly covered the entire island, clearly reflecting everything happening on the coastline into his mind. Rocks D. Zebek. Learn it just by watching once. The era of great pirates hasn't produced a monster like this in hundreds of years. Interesting. Rox grinned, a glint of keen interest flashing in his eyes. Shifting the view back to the coastline. The aura around Silver Axe changed completely. Formidable armament haki tightly wrapped around the heavy giant axe. Even more shockingly, a buzzing sound of electric current actually came from the air. Rain, look closely. This move is called Thunder Silver Axe. It's a power generation technique I figured out in my early years by standing in storms and enduring countless bolts of natural lightning. Silver Axe explained loudly, his tone full of pride, swinging the axe 100,000 times every day, continuously chopping in the deep sea, and finally using the ultimate friction between armament haki and the air to generate lightning out of thin air. Pure combination of physicality and haki, with no devil fruit bonuses whatsoever. Even Rox had once spoken in praise of this move's power. Ha! With a fierce shout, Silver Axe raised the giant axe with both hands and fiercely cleaved it down toward the ocean ahead. Rumble. A massive blue slash mixed with violent thunder whistled outward. The coastline beneath his feet collapsed instantly, and violent winds carrying lightning ran rampant. The thunder light slash surged into the ocean, ruthlessly tearing apart a sea surface over 100 meters wide. The seawater boiled violently, lightning flashed wildly within the giant trench, raising a sky full of vapor. It was unable to calm down for a long time. The surrounding apprentice pirates were all scared dumb. A mere axe swing could create a natural disaster-like spectacle of this scale. Rain stood in place, and the notification sound in his mind rang out on schedule. Ding! Your heaven-defying comprehension has observed Thunder Silver Axe, operating at high speed to comprehensively dismantle it. Ding! The system found that Thunder Silver Axe is overly cumbersome and completely mismatching with the host's swordsman demeanor, automatically optimizing it into a one-handed swordsmanship form and purifying the lightning generation mechanism. Congratulations, host! Successfully mastered the derivative ultimate technique Thunder Silver Sword / perfect version. Current proficiency. Mastery 20%. Listening to the system's voice, Rain was blooming with joy inside. Even weapon restrictions could be directly broken through, the system truly was like family. How is it? Did you understand? It's not embarrassing if you can't learn it. After all, being able to understand even a little bit is already pretty good. Silver Axe put away the giant axe, turned his head, and looked at Rain smugly. Newgate and Shiki also stared closely at Rain. Rain didn't speak, instead walking forward silently to pick up the most ordinary iron sword from the ground. Captain Silver Axe's move is indeed powerful. Rain gripped the sword hilt with one hand, speaking full of confidence, however, it's not difficult, I've already learned it. The whole place instantly exploded into an uproar. Learned it? What kind of joke is this? Before anyone could voice their doubts, Rain directly made his move. Armament haki instantly covered the blade. Immediately following, a scalp-tingling buzzing sound rang out. Wisps of dazzling blue lightning, like wandering snakes, leapt and converged frantically on the rusted iron sword. The violent lightning aura was exactly the same as when Silver Axe was charging up earlier. Hiss. Absolute silence fell across the scene. Even the sound of waves crashing against the reefs seemed to have vanished. Silver Axe's mouth was wide open, his eyeballs almost popping out, staring fixedly at the lightning-infused iron sword in Rain's hand. Really learned it. And he actually pulled it off using a sword. The coastline was pin-drop silent. Everyone looked as if they had seen a ghost, staring dead at the iron sword flashing with manic thunder in Rain's hand. Rain didn't utter any nonsense, his expression turning serious as he swung downward fiercely with one hand. Boom! A sword chi wrapped in blue thunder whistled outward, precisely cleaving into the unhealed rift in the ocean surface. The seawater was forcibly torn apart once more, and the thunderlight burst frantically within the abyss. He really learned it. The surrounding pirates were full of horror, shaking all over in fright. Even Whitebeard tightly gripped his sword hilt, churning monstrous waves in his heart. Earlier, he had also secretly deduced Silver Axe's power generation technique in his mind, but ended up completely unable to figure out any clues. Yet Rain had only watched it once, and not only learned it, but directly transformed it into a swordsmanship form. Wang Ji, John, and Silver Axe were covered in cold sweat, their worldview completely collapsing. Being able to master a fatal ultimate move just by watching it once, if he practiced for a few more days, wouldn't he defy the heavens completely? At the back of the crowd, the tall and robust young Kaido clenched his fists tightly, the veins on his arms bulging and throbbing. What kind of monstrous talent is this? Charlotte Linlin, standing tall nearby, widened her eyes even further, blurting out, with aptitude this perverted, won't he even be able to surpass Captain Rox in the future? As soon as these words came out, Striason behind her broke out in cold sweat from fright. At the same time, inside the dark room deep within Skull Rock, Rox suddenly stood up, terrifying sharp light bursting from his eyes. Relying on his observation haki covering the entire island, he saw everything clearly. Perfect guidance of lightning power, an unprecedented monster genius. Rox strode out of the room, heading straight for the coastline. Shifting the view back to the coastline. Gihahaha. I told you so, but you refused to believe me. Golden Lion Shiki laughed out loud, staring at Ryan with burning eyes. Ryan, don't hesitate anymore. Come to my division. Let's rule the world together. Shiki, you're asking for death. Whitebeard was completely enraged. With a bang, a terrifying conqueror's haki erupted from his body. Shiki did not back down at all, similarly unleashing a powerful conqueror's haki, fiercely colliding against it. Bang, bang, bang. The sky instantly darkened, and dark red lightning crazily intertwined and collided between the two of them. The slightly weaker probationary pirates around them instantly rolled their eyes back, foamed at the mouth, and collapsed all over the ground. Wang Ji and the others also narrowed their eyes, no longer stopping them. Facing a genius of this level, the thought of recruiting him naturally arose in their hearts as well. However, Ryan, who was at the very center of the storm, not only didn't feel oppressed, but instead felt completely comfortable all over. Ding! Your conqueror's haki has been caught in a pincer attack by two top-tier auras, receiving intense stimulation, and its proficiency is skyrocketing wildly. Proficiency plus 5%, plus 10%, plus 15%. Listening to the system's prompt, Ryan was overjoyed in his heart. AFK leveling was simply too awesome. He wished these two big shots would stand in a standoff for even longer. Just at the moment when Newgate and Shiki were about to draw their blades and fight to the death, a deep yet absolutely oppressive voice exploded across the entire scene. All of you, stop. Everyone's hearts trembled violently, turning their heads in unison. They saw Rox with wild black hair striding over, the dark aura emanating from his body making everyone afraid to even draw a heavy breath. Captain Rox. All the pirates shouted in unison. Newgate and Shiki exchanged glances, each restraining their aura and retreating to the side. Wang Ji hurriedly stepped forward, just wanting to open his mouth to report the situation, but was glared back by a single look from Rox. I already know the situation. Rox ignored the knocked out pirates all over the ground, his gaze landing directly on Ryan as he grinned widely. Newgate, Shiki, the two of you don't need to fight over him either. Hashinosu cannot withstand the two of you tossing it around. Everyone was stunned. Stop fighting over him. Could it be that the captain doesn't want this genius to join any division? Rox waved his big hand, his arrogant voice spreading across the entire coastline. Ryan doesn't need to join any of your subordinates. Starting today, he is directly promoted as an officer captain of the Rox Pirates, and is permitted to form his own division. Boom. The entire crowd was as if struck by heavenly lightning, everyone's expressions looking like they had seen a ghost. Directly bypassing all evaluations and letting a probationary crew member who just boarded the ship 3 days ago become an officer. Standing on equal footing with Whitebeard and Golden Lion. This was simply unheard of in the history of the pirate crew. Captain, isn't this against the rules? Wang Ji was covered in sweat, bracing himself to speak. Rox suddenly turned his head, his terrifying murderous intent instantly locking onto Wang Ji. My words are the rules. Do you have an opinion? Wang Ji's legs went soft, repeatedly lowering his head. None. I will follow the captain's arrangements entirely. Newgate and Shaki looked at each other in dismay, unable to refute even half a sentence. Since it was an order personally issued by the captain, who dared to say another half word too much? Captain Rox, isn't this too rash? John couldn't help speaking up, his face flushing red. Wang Ji didn't dare to talk back, but when John's temper flared, he didn't care about such things. That's right, Captain, Ryan just boarded the ship. No matter how good his talent is, making him an officer now will probably make it hard for his strength to convince the crowd. Silver Axe chimed in as well. Since the establishment of the Rox Pirates, all the officers, whether Whitebeard, Golden Lion, Wang Ji, or John, had all sat in their positions by relying on bloody battles again and again, stepping over countless corpses. Now, a probationary crew member was suddenly airdropped in to stand on equal footing with them, who could feel happy in their heart. Not to mention the officers, those veteran official crew members around them were even more infuriated to the point of itching teeth. They had fought tooth and nail for years for the position of an officer, only for a newcomer to snatch it away. Rox did not rush to lose his temper, instead scanning the entire audience with a heart-palpitating gaze. Except for Whitebeard, who still wore a nonchalant expression, everyone else subconsciously avoided Rox's gaze. His talent, all of you witnessed with your own eyes just now. Rox's voice was not loud, yet it exploded in everyone's ears. With this kind of talent, becoming a top-tier powerhouse is only a matter of time. Such a genius, not only do you want him, but I will definitely not let him go either. Rox's mouth split into a violent smile. Instead of letting the few of you beat each other bloody over him, it's better for me to take him in directly. Speaking to this point, the dark aura on Rox's body burst forth roaringly, and a pressure-like substance enshrouded the entire coastline. My decision is the rule. Whoever is unconvinced, step out right now and spar with me. The entire scene was dead silent. John's Adam's apple bobbed, forcefully swallowing back the words that were at the tip of his tongue. Silver Axe and Wang Ji also lowered their heads, covered in sweat. Whitebeard and Golden Lion exchanged glances. Although they felt it was inappropriate, they also wisely chose to shut up. In this pirate crew, Rox was the absolute god. Disobeying him meant only a dead end. Seeing that no one dared to speak up anymore, Rox restrained his aura. He strode over to Ryan, extended his large hand, and heavily patted Ryan's shoulder. Kid, don't let me down. Leaving behind these meaningful words, Rox turned and left. Until Rox's back completely vanished from sight did the surrounding pirates heave a sigh of relief and breathe heavily. But immediately following that, the veteran crew members' gazes towards Ryan became even more malicious than before, as if they wanted to eat people. The attitudes of several officer captains also underwent subtle changes. Ryan, Captain Rox values you so much, you must be careful from now on. Wang Ji's complexion was uncertain, leaving behind a remark with a forced smile. Silver Axe and John snorted coldly and walked away without saying a word. In their view, an officer without sufficient strength would definitely not live long in the Rox Pirates. Eula la. Kid, now you also have the qualification to recruit people yourself. Whitebeard laughed twice, carrying the Murakumogiri and turning back toward the camp. This surprise came too suddenly. all the seniors will still need to look after me from now on. Ryan rubbed his nose, feeling secretly thrilled in his heart. Becoming a senior executive directly meant more resources and freedom, and the speed of AFK leveling would definitely be able to double. Gihahaha. Ryan, no matter what, I, Shaki, acknowledge you as a monster of the same tier. Come find me for a drink when you have time. Golden Lion did not conceal his appreciation at all, laughing out loud as he flew up into the sky and left. Once the big shots left, the remaining low-level probationary crew members instantly went into an uproar. This was an absolute prime opportunity to directly latch onto a big shot's coattails and become an official crew member. Under other officers, one still had to go through cruel selections, but under Ryan, a commander with no subordinates yet, it would definitely be much easier to get along. Of course, there were also people who scoffed at this. At the edge of the crowd, the tall young Kaido gave Ryan a cold glance, turned around, and walked into the woods. Big Mom also took a bite of the donut in her hand, leaving without looking back alongside Long Bread. With their pride, it was absolutely impossible for them to submit to serving under a newcomer. But the remaining probationary crew members couldn't care about that much. They swarmed forward in a flock, surrounding Ryan tightly. Captain Ryan, you truly are a once-in-a-millennium genius. Captain Ryan, my name is Buck. I am willing to go through fire and water for you. Captain, let me join your division. I can do any dirty or exhausting work. Listening to the deafening flattery all around, a crisp notification sound suddenly rang in Ryan's mind. Ding! Your conqueror's haki felt the awe and submission of a large number of underlings, and its mood became greatly pleased, causing its proficiency to skyrocket by 10%. Ryan's eyes lit up. This group of underlings were simply walking experience packs. Stop arguing. Ryan raised his hand, suppressing everyone's voices, and loudly announced, as long as you want to join my division, all comers are welcome. Follow me from now on, and I guarantee you'll eat well and live well. Since the system could level up through this method, he didn't care what kind of goods were recruited, expanding his momentum to earn proficiency came first. Upon hearing this, the crowd instantly cheered and jumped with joy, flattering even louder. However, just when waves were being stirred up on Hashinosu because of Ryan. In an extremely concealed reef cave at the back of the island, a pirate draped in a black cloak was holding a miniature Den Den Mushi, nervously fiddling with it. The first half of the Grand Line. Marineford, Marineford. Inside the office of the current Fleet Admiral Kong, the dedicated Den Den Mushi suddenly rang urgently. Inside the office, the young Sengoku, Garp, and Zephyr were sitting on the sofa drinking tea. Hearing this special ringtone, the expressions of the three men turned solemn at the same time. Fleet Admiral Kong put down the documents in his hand and picked up the receiver. I am Kong. The expression of the Den Den Mushi instantly turned into that of a terrified pirate, lowering its voice as it said, Fleet Admiral Kong. This is Hashinosu. An unprecedented monster rookie has just appeared among the Rock's pirates. The voice coming from the Den Den Mushi was kept very low, leaking uncontainable terror. Fleet Admiral Kong frowned slightly, his tone very flat. A remarkable rookie. The intelligence on Kaido and Charlotte Linlin has already been grasped by Marineford. No. Not them. The Den Den Mushi shook its head frantically. It's a far more terrifying new face. Fleet Admiral Kong paused for a moment, a trace of surprise flashing in his eyes. Kaido and Linlin already had monster-level physical constitutions. Could there be an even more terrifying rookie? A trainee named Ryan. Only 3 days on the ship, and he has already perfectly mastered Whitebeard Newgate's ultimate swordsmanship, even slashing out a Murakumo slash. The undercover agent spoke at an extremely fast pace. Just as Fleet Admiral Kong wanted to speak, the undercover agent immediately dropped a bombshell. Not only that, Golden Lion Shiki demonstrated a sword technique on the spot in order to recruit Ryan. As a result, Ryan took just one look and learned it on the spot. To fight over him, Newgate and Shiki directly erupted with Conqueror's haki, almost sinking the coastline. Hearing this, Fleet Admiral Kong's expression changed completely. What level of powerhouses were Newgate and Shiki? The core combat power of the Rock's pirates. The two of them actually drew their swords against each other over a trainee. Sengoku, Garp, and Zephyr, sitting on the sofa, also stopped drinking their tea, their expressions turning very solemn. Fleet Admiral Kong, are you listening? I am, continue reporting. Fleet Admiral Kong took a deep breath, forcefully suppressing the shock in his heart. Later, executives like Wang Ji and Silver Axe all arrived. Silver Axe demonstrated his trump card Thunder Silver Axe in public, attempting to give Ryan a warning. As a result, Ryan watched it just once and perfectly replicated the lightning slash with a rusty iron sword. What? Fleet Admiral Kong abruptly stood up, the documents on his desk scattering all over the floor. The Marines were very well aware of how strong Silver Axe's ultimate move was. There was once a fully manned Royal Marine fleet that was hacked into pieces, people and ships alike, by a single bolt of lightning giant axe. Able to learn it just by looking at it. How could there be such a defying common sense thing in this world? The undercover agent in the Den Den Mushi swallowed hard, their tone even more shocked. Captain Rox personally stepped forward to stop the conflict. Facing Ryan's perverted talent, Rox gave an order on the spot, exceptionally promoting Ryan directly to a core executive. He is allowed to form his own division. Directly promoted to an executive. Fleet Admiral Kong's fists clenched tightly. Someone is coming, hanging up first. The Den Den Mushi emitted a busy tone, instantly reverting to the appearance of an ordinary snail. Inside the Admiral's office, there was a deathly silence. Garp forgot to eat the senbei in his hand, Sengoku pushed up his frog-like glasses, and Zephyr was filled with utter astonishment. The intelligence sounded like a shoddy tavern story. Big Brother Kong, can things like learning someone else's killer move just by looking at it really exist? Zephyr was the first to snap back to his senses, his tone filled with skepticism. Silver Axe's exertion technique required stirring natural lightning, how could it possibly be understood in an instant? Sengoku shook his head with a solemn expression. Our informants have undergone strict training and would never joke with such outrageous false intelligence. If the intelligence is true, Ryan's level of threat far exceeds that of Kaido and Linlin, who only rely on brute force. Monster-like physical bodies could still be destroyed with artillery fire and hockey. But a monster-like brain and comprehension represented endless growth potential. Fleet Admiral Kong said nothing, turning and walking into the secret room inside the office. He took out a pitch-black special Den Den Mushi and dialed a top-secret number. This was a single-line undercover agent planted by the Marines in the upper echelons of the Rock's pirates. I am Kong. Did a newcomer with heaven-defying comprehension appear in Hashinosu? After the Den Den Mushi connected, a slightly mocking voice came through. Your intelligence network is quite fast. You found out not long after things happened. Get to the point. Fleet Admiral Kong's voice was low. The intelligence is true. Ryan's talent is even more terrifying than you imagine. Kong, don't blame me for not warning you. This rookie's level of danger is by no means inferior to Rox himself. The Black Den Den Mushi transmitted a cold warning and then directly hung up. Fleet Admiral Kong walked out of the secret room, his expression as gloomy as if water could drip from it. Even the arrogant senior undercover agent had given such a high evaluation. Ryan's terror was already beyond question. Immediately list Ryan's name on Marineford's highest level danger list. Fleet Admiral Kong looked at the three men of Sengoku and issued a strict order, temporarily label his strength level as unknown. Garp and the other two looked at each other, their moods heavy. The Rock's pirates were already a stronghold of lawless madmen, and now there was an evildoer with heaven-defying comprehension added to it. The future of the sea was bound to stir up truly huge waves. The scene returns to Hashinosu Island. In the days following the storm, Ryan stayed in his exclusive camp. As a newly promoted executive, he not only was assigned an independent luxurious wooden cabin, but also owned a large private beach. Over the past few days, Ryan hadn't gone out to stir up trouble. Instead, he comfortably lay on a beach chair, basking in the sea breeze and watching the data on the system panel jump wildly. Ding! After a few days of settling, your Conqueror's hockey proficiency has reached 15% of mastery. Ding. Your Thunder Silver Sword slash automatically deduced in idle state, its power increased by 20%. Soon, the day for the new executive to recruit division members officially arrived. Ding. The host's Kongyan sword slash idled and slacked off last night, and the progress barely increased. Current progress. 30% mastery. Ding. The host's lion's severing waves felt the environment was crude and was in low spirits. Current progress. 10% mastery. Ding. The host's thunder silver sword slash diligently cultivated, accelerating its training speed. Current progress. 41% mastery. Ding. The host's observation hockey probed around everywhere during the night and was extremely excited. Current progress. 10% mastery. Ding. The host's conqueror's hockey believed it should suppress everything and was exceptionally excited. Current progress. 80% proficiency. Ding. The host's armament hockey disdained the rusted iron sword, refused to coat it, and went on strike directly last night. Current progress. 6% mastery. Ding. The host's Rokushiki worked diligently all night. Current progress. 90% mastery. Listening to the series of notification sounds in his mind, Rain slowly opened his eyes. He glanced at the rusted iron sword placed at the head of the bed, feeling speechless in his heart. Ever since this system mutated, the skills inside had simply been getting more and more temperamental. Especially armament hockey. Even a weapon that was too broken would affect the idle efficiency and even directly lead to a strike in protest. It seems that after going out to sea, I must find a way to get a decent, good sword. Rain helplessly shook his head. However, the overall progress over the past few days was still quite exaggerated. Except for Conqueror's hockey, which was the hardest to level up, the other core skills had basically all surged to the mastery level. Even Rokushiki was something he had casually stolen from other pirates on the island a couple of days ago. After learning Rokushiki, Rain's physical fitness, which had originally reached a bottleneck, ushered in another leap, and his physical strength continued to grow stronger every day. The current him was no longer a soft persimmon that anyone could manipulate. After waking up and washing up, Rain carried the iron sword and walked out of the wooden cabin. Today was the day for the newly promoted officers to officially recruit division members. The wide open space below Skull Rock was already densely packed with pirates. As soon as Rain appeared, the audience's gazes instantly concentrated on him. Acquaintances such as Whitebeard, Golden Lion, and Silver Axe all nodded and greeted him very friendly. Wang Ji, John, and a few unfamiliar-faced officers he had never met before wore looks of disdain. In their view, Rain was just a punk who lucked out and had no qualification to sit on equal footing with them at all. Rain ignored the strange gazes around him and walked straight over to sit on the wooden box next to Whitebeard. Gururara, a bunch of veteran pirates around are jealous of your position. Watch out later, kid, don't trip and fall. Whitebeard casually reminded him. It doesn't matter. If they've mixed around for so many years and can't even become an officer, it just shows their strength is mediocre. Rain's tone was casual, not caring in the least. Whitebeard immediately burst out laughing. This brat's temper fit his appetite way too well. Soon, the personnel selection officially began. Rain didn't pick any elite soldiers or fierce generals. With a big wave of his hand, he directly took all the trainees who had frantically sucked up to him a few days ago under his command, casually pointed at a few more people to make up the numbers, and settled his division at lightning speed. In the crowd, a pair of horns had already grown on the tall Kaido's head. It seemed that within these past few days, he had already eaten the mythical zone, Azure Dragon form devil fruit. Big Mom, Striasen, and Kurozumi Higurashi who ran out from Wano country all proudly chose other offices divisions to join. Nearing noon, the external selection ended, and Rain followed a group of veteran officers into the spacious hall inside Skull Rock. The leader, Rox, was grabbing the roasted meat on the table and tearing into it in big bites. Seeing everyone enter, Rox pointed at the long table. Sit down, let's talk while we eat. Rain unceremoniously pulled out a chair and sat down, grabbing a large piece of meat on the bone and gnawing on it. Grilling fish by the seaside every day for the past few days, he could finally taste proper meat. A few veteran officers snorted coldly, looking at Rain with very unkind eyes, feeling that this kid had no manners at all. Hearing the veteran officer's cold snort, Golden Lion and Whitebeard immediately turned their heads and glared over. Shaki even took the initiative to pat Rain on the shoulder, signaling him to eat in peace. Rain naturally wouldn't take these jealous guys to heart. Rox quickly wiped out the meat bones in front of him, casually wiped the grease off his hands, and his gaze swept across the entire room. Spies sent back reliable intelligence. 1 month from now, a celestial dragon will go to a country in the east to inspect and tour. Rox's mouth split open, revealing a dangerous smile. Upon hearing the 3 words, celestial dragons, the eyes of all the officers present lit up completely. Killing celestial dragons was precisely the thing this group of thugs loved doing the most. Not only that, Rox suddenly stood up, pressing both hands on the tabletop, his voice rising. On the celestial dragon's ship, there is also a full ship escorted with heavenly tribute. The target of our operation this time is to kill the celestial dragons and snatch the heavenly tribute. The whole room instantly boiled over. Even a trace of excitement flashed in Whitebeard's eyes. Heavenly tribute was astonishing wealth plundered from countless countries after all. Who could not be tempted? All of you, quiet down. Rox suppressed the crowd's hubbub, his gaze turning incomparably solemn. The Marines, guard force is definitely not weak. Sengoku the Buddha, Black Arm Zephyr, and Suru might all be there. Even Kong might be patrolling in the nearby waters. Hearing these names, the office's complexions became much more serious. These few people were all top-tier combat forces within the Marine. Silver Axe frowned and asked, "Is Fist Garp there?" Garp hates the celestial dragons, so he is not on the guard list this time. Rox chuckled, to ensure nothing goes wrong, except for Wang Ji staying behind to guard Hashinosu, all other divisions will sortie out. Wang Ji was stunned on the spot. Stay behind to guard the base camp. Why wasn't the weakest Rain the one left behind? Rox saw through Wang Ji's thoughts and directly explained, Rain's hard strength is not enough yet. In case the Marines' main force comes to raid our home, would you guys feel at ease handing the base camp over to him? Handing it to you, Wang Ji, is the only way everyone feels secure. The officers nodded one after another. Although Wang Ji was helpless, he could only agree. Rain's division is responsible for providing backup on the outer perimeter. Rox finalized the plan. There is 1 month of preparation time. This is a top-secret operation. If anyone leaks even a hint of the news, I'll skin them alive. Everyone agreed in unison. With the serious business explained, Rox changed the subject, his gaze falling on Rain with great interest. Directly promoting Rain to an officer, it seems there are still quite a few people who are unconvinced in their hearts. An unfamiliar officer who had sneered earlier directly spoke up, he just has slightly better aptitude. Without witnessing it with our own eyes, who knows if the rumors outside are just made up? Rox laughed, absolute confidence leaking from his smile. Haven't witnessed it with your own eyes. Good. Today, I'll personally teach a couple of moves and verify Rain's talent face to face. The whole audience was suddenly startled. Captain Rox was going to personally step down to teach someone. Even Whitebeard and Golden Lion widened their eyes, full of astonishment. No problem. Rain immediately agreed, blooming with joy inside. The captain teaching personally, this was a once-in-a-lifetime great opportunity to freeload. Let's go, all of you follow me outside to take a look. Rox waved his big hand, turned around, and strode toward the door outside. Outside the giant skull rock in Hashinosu. Rox strode at the very front, closely followed by a group of executives. Seeing the higher-ups coming out in full force, the apprentice crew members and peripheral pirates curiously gathered around. When they heard that Captain Rox was going to personally step down and teach Rain a couple of moves, the entire scene completely boiled over. Captain's personal teaching. This must be the final step to verify Rain's talent. If he can really learn the captain's moves just by glancing at them, no one will ever be able to shake Executive Rain's position. In the open space, Rox stopped and swept his gaze across the densely packed crowd around him, Anyone who wants to learn can watch, and how much you comprehend depends on your own destiny. As soon as his voice fell, Silver Axe very perceptibly walked up carrying a hard boulder as tall as a person and weighing several tons, slamming it down in front of Rocks with a bang. This terrifying arm strength frightened quite a few apprentice crew members into shrinking their necks back. You all know that hockey is divided into 3 types. Rocks crossed his arms, his voice echoing across the entire venue. Today, I will first teach the first move, the advanced application of armament hockey. The venue instantly fell silent, and even top executives like Whitebeard and Golden Lion held their breath. Kaido and Big Mom in the crowd widened their eyes even further, afraid of missing a single detail. Ordinary armament hockey is like putting on an invisible layer of hard armor, or using it to strengthen attacks. Rocks slowly extended an index finger, and pitch black armament hockey instantly covered it. But armament hockey has an even deeper realm, known as Ruo, in Wano country. Surpassing ordinary coating and infusion, it can directly strike into the enemy's body, causing fatal destruction from the inside out. Accompanied by Rox's explanation, wisps of dark red light inexplicably emerged on his pitch-black index finger, wrapping tightly around the fingertips like flowing airflow. Rain's eyes suddenly lit up. Internal destruction. This is definitely the absolute top-tier application technique of armament hockey on the sea right now. Even powerhouses at the level of the 4 emperors might not be able to master it perfectly. The eyes of the surrounding executives were filled with fanaticism. Most of them had only touched the threshold of this realm and simply could not do it as effortlessly as Rocks. Rocks didn't waste any words, casually tapping his finger against the boulder in front of him. Only a slight crack sound was heard. The surface of the boulder was intact, without even a trace of a crack. But immediately after, the entire stone was like an egg whose shell had been peeled off. The moment the outer skin peeled away, the hard rock inside had already turned into a pile of fine powder drifting away with the wind. The pirates present were horrified and terrified, the sounds of gasping cold air rising one after another. Direct destruction from the inside. If this finger were to point at a person, wouldn't their internal organs instantly turn into minced meat? Ding! Your armament hockey has observed the world's top-tier internal destruction technique, as if receiving divine enlightenment, and is wildly deducing. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Armament hockey has broken through the bottleneck and successfully promoted to the mastery stage 10%. The current training speed is permanently increased by 100%. Listening to the prompt ringing in his mind, Rain was simply blooming with joy inside. Jumping directly from proficiency to mastery level. With just one punch now, he could definitely beat a master of the same level until they doubted life. Not only Rain, but many surrounding pirates were also stimulated and raised their hands to try one after another. In the crowd, the young Big Mom closed her eyes tightly, and soon, a layer of invisible fluctuations slowly flowed across her palms. I think I understand a little bit. Linlin shouted excitedly. Everyone cast sideways glances, their faces full of envy. As expected of a natural-born destroyer, she actually managed to comprehend a trace of the surface. Tall Kaido next to her gritted his teeth and tried for a long time, but the hockey on his hands remained lifeless, angering him to smash a wooden box nearby with one punch, his face full of annoyance. Rocks gave Linlin an appreciative look, then his gaze fell on Rain, not rushing to ask for the result, but turning to look at a barren mountain behind the island. Next is the second move. Rox's expression became unprecedentedly serious, the advanced technique of Conqueror's hockey. Boom! A single stone stirs up 1,000 waves. The hearts of all the pirates present beat wildly involuntarily. Conqueror's hockey is a kingly aptitude that is 1 in a million and cannot be acquired through postnatal cultivation. The vast majority of people's understanding of Haoshoku still stays at the stage of clearing grunts and deterring opponents. Even among the executives, several people did not possess this aptitude. Now Rocks actually said that Haoshoku has advanced techniques. And he was going to teach it publicly. The captain's terrifying magnanimity that encompasses everything truly inspires awe in people. Rain, I know you have awakened Haoshoku. Rocks suddenly spoke. Rain touched his nose and nodded in turn. Although he suppressed it very quickly when he awakened, it obviously couldn't hide from observation hockey of a level like Rox's. Whitebeard and Golden Lion probably noticed it long ago as well. Look closely. Rox took a deep breath, his right fist clenching fiercely. Haoshoku is different from armament hockey, it is a materialized deterrent force. When you infuse it into your attacks, you can deal devastating blows. Rumble. A wild and matchless conqueror's hockey, as if it could crush souls, surged out from within Rox. Dark red lightning crazily intertwined, tightly wrapping around Rox's fist. The slightly weaker pirates around didn't even manage to let out a scream before rolling their eyes, foaming at the mouth, and falling down in batches. Rox punched out through the air towards a barren mountain hundreds of meters away. Bang! There was no contact at all. A terrifying shock wave mixed with black and red lightning instantly crossed space and slammed fiercely into the mountain body. A deafening explosion sounded, and strong winds mixed with crushed stones swept wildly in all directions. When the smoke and dust cleared, everyone froze in place like they were petrified. The entire small mountain peak in the distance had actually vanished out of thin air. It was completely blasted into flat ground by Rox's punch through the air. At the back of the crowd, Kaido stared fixedly at the distant ruins, a flash of enlightenment suddenly crossing his mind, and he muttered neurotically, "So that's how it is. Haoshoku can be used like this too." At this moment, the system in Rain's mind had gone completely crazy. Ding! Your conqueror's hockey has witnessed with its own eyes the heaven-shaking divine might of Haoshoku infusion, receiving unprecedented shock and guidance. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Conqueror's hockey has broken through forcefully and successfully promoted to the mastery stage 1%. The current training speed is permanently increased by 100%. Listening to the prompt coming from the system, Rain couldn't help but let the corners of his mouth curve up frantically. Not only the internal destruction of armament hockey, but even Haoshoku infusion broke through directly to the mastery stage. This feeling was like pushing open a door leading to the top-tier powerhouses. The system was indeed domineering, requiring no laborious exploration from himself at all. How is it? Rain, did you understand? Rox turned his head and asked in a flat tone. The surrounding executives squinted their eyes one after another, staring fixedly at Rain. It would be one thing if ordinary moves could be learned after watching them once. But internal destruction and Haoshoku infusion were the top-tier thresholds that blocked countless pirates of the New World. If even these could be mastered instantly, it would truly be too shocking to the world. Facing Rox's inquiry, Rain took a deep breath, his mouth parting into a confident smile. Captain Rox, I've already learned it. As soon as the words fell, the hearts of all the pirates present skipped a beat involuntarily. Learned it again. The few unfamiliar executives who had been speaking coldly just moments ago widened their eyes, their faces full of expressions as if they had seen a ghost. Wang Ji, Silver Axe, John, and the others breathed even more heavily, their pupils trembling violently. Kaido and Big Mom in the crowd could not help but stop what they were doing, their eyes filled with disbelief. If even this could be learned instantly, this was simply not a talent a human could possess. A flash of sharpness crossed Rox's eyes. Without speaking, he silently took half a step back to make room. Rain didn't stand on ceremony and walked straight toward a huge, intact boulder nearby. He slowly extended his right hand. The pitch-black armament hockey instantly covered his palm, and immediately after, wisps of dark red light frantically wound and flowed between his fingers like flowing water. The surrounding pirates were so frightened that they retreated repeatedly, swallowing hard. It was exactly the same effect Rox had just displayed. Without any sense of unskillfulness. Rain's eyes narrowed as he clenched his hand into a fist and slammed it fiercely at the boulder in front of him. Bang! A muffled sound came out. The surface of the boulder seemed to have no changes at all, but the next second. With a crisp crack of snap, the boulder instantly filled with cracks like a spiderweb, and then collapsed with a roar, turning into a pile of fine powder all over the ground. The audience was dead silent. Even a needle dropping to the ground could be heard. Completely shattered from the inside. It really was internal destruction. Before everyone could recover from the shock, the aura on Rain's body suddenly changed. Boom! A violent, peerless deterrent force that seemed to crush everything erupted from within him like a volcano. Dark red lightning took Rain as the center and crazily diffused around. This was the first time Rain released Haoshoku without reservation in public. Gales howled, and the surrounding pirates fell down in large swaths with white eyes rolled back, making even some veteran formal crew members feel breathing difficulties and weak legs. Feeling this haki, Rox narrowed his eyes slightly. The quality of this Haoshoku was frighteningly high, filled with endless ambition and aggressiveness. What kind of king does this kid want to be in the future? At this time, Rain aimed his right fist, which was entwined with dark red lightning, at an abandoned dilapidated house hundreds of meters away. Across the air, he punched out. Bang! The shockwave mixed with black and red lightning instantly crossed space and slammed fiercely into the dilapidated house. Rumble! The entire wooden house instantly split into pieces, turning into sky-full debris under the violent haki impact, and even the foundations were forcefully blown away. The pirates in the audience were completely dumbfounded, and exclamations rose one after another. Those executives who were originally dissatisfied with Rain turned green and pale at the moment, completely shutting their mouths. Whitebeard and Golden Lion exchanged glances and revealed knowing smiles. Ha 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 ha. Rox suddenly laughed loudly, his eyes filled with fanaticism. Good. As expected of the person I fancied. Your talent is truly worthy of the position of an executive. Rox was well aware that as long as Rain did not die prematurely halfway, within 3 years, he would definitely have a place of his own on the Great Sea. Rain put away his fist, his expression still calm. But inside, he was blooming with joy. Because the system's prompt tone was still continuing, the doubled training speed state of these two supreme skills could still be maintained for a long time. After the shock, the gazes of the surrounding executives and veteran crew members toward Rain completely changed. If previously they only felt that Rain was lucky, now it was deep dread. Rain, who had mastered these two top-tier techniques, already had the capital to truly threaten their lives. Rox then glanced at Big Mom and Kaido in the crowd, nodding appreciatively. You two are not bad either. Having ambition is a good thing. After speaking, Rox turned around and walked back to Skull Rock with a satisfied smile. Once the captain left, the atmosphere at the scene eased slightly. Those veteran crew members restrained their hostility one after another, not daring to stare at Rain with cold eyes anymore. Here, strength was the best pass. Guraralalala. Rain, you brat hide quite deeply. Whitebeard laughed loudly and walked forward, slapping Rain on the back. Since you've even learned Conqueror's Haki and Fusion, it looks like I won't need to look out for you anymore. Jihahahaha. This is the threshold to become a top-tier powerhouse. Golden Lion also floated over, full of excitement. Rain, well done. Let's see who still dares to say you're not qualified to be an executive. Rain smiled and exchanged pleasantries with the two. On this perilous island, befriending these two future 4 Emperors-level big shots was definitely not a bad thing. After a few casual words, Rain bid farewell to everyone and turned to walk toward his own camp. There was still a month before setting sail. This was his first large-scale operation since coming to this world, and the target was still the aloof celestial dragons. Rain clenched his fists, feeling the surging power within his body. Taking advantage of this 1 month, I must let my strength take another step up. A month's time flashed by in an instant. For Rain, these short 30 days were definitely a metamorphic transformation. Ever since witnessing Rox's top-tier teaching, the system had been in a state of high excitement, and the buff effect of training acceleration had maintained for over 20 days. Every morning when waking up, the pleasant prompt tone would sound in Rain's mind on time. Ding! Your Haoshoku has gone through an excited deduction all night, and the progress has rapidly improved. Ding! Your armament haki has run wildly throughout the night, and its proficiency has surged massively. The two top-tier haki were crazily gaining experience every day, putting Rain in a great mood. Only a few attack skills started throwing tantrums again. Ding! Your Kongyan sword slash dislikes the rusty broken iron sword and went on strike for the whole night, its progress completely stagnating. Ding. Your lion's severing waves is spiritless, feeling that the weapon is too trashy, and completely doesn't want to move. Looking at these prompts, Rain was extremely helpless. Without a good weapon, these spoiled kids stubbornly refused to work. On the sixth day, Rain went straight to find Golden Lion Shiki. Hearing that Rain wanted to look for a good sword, Shiki was very generous, directly pulling out his private collection for Rain to choose at will. Among the piles of weapons, Rain took a fancy to a katana with a purple scabbard at a glance. Jihahaha. You have sharp eyes. This is the famous sword Nidai Kidetsu that I purloined from Wano country a few years ago. Shiki laughed and explained, however, this is a cursed blade, very demonic, and prone to backfiring on swordsmen. I've never used it. Rain didn't mind at all and took it directly after expressing thanks. With the system suppressing it, whatever cursed blade or demonic aura had to honestly lie down and act as a tool. Sure enough, after switching to the great-grade swords Nidai Kidetsu, the system's attitude instantly underwent a 180-degree turn. Several major swordsmanships were crazily sprinting every day, even fiercer than the upgrade speed of hockey. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, it was the early morning of the day of the sailing operation. Rain opened his eyes amidst the system's prompt tones. Ding. Your Haoshoku has steadily improved. Current progress. Control stage 96%. Ding. Your armament hockey has run regularly for a night. Current progress. Control stage 89%. Open panel. Rain muttered inwardly. Host. Rain. Haoshoku. Control stage 96%. Observation hockey. Control stage 90%. Armament hockey. Control stage 89%. Kongyan sword slash. Pinnacle stage 30%. Thunder silver sword slash. Pinnacle stage 41%. Lion's severing waves. Pinnacle stage 10%. Looking at the gorgeous data, Rain grinned straight with joy. The further along hockey got, the harder it was to upgrade, but as long as one stepped into the control stage, even a 1% increase would cause a qualitative change in strength. And it was not far from the next pinnacle stage. Various core killer moves had completely reached the pinnacle. If Thunder Silver Sword Slash were cast once again now, its power would definitely be much more terrifying than what Silver Axe originally displayed. Coupled with the physical enhancement brought by the pinnacle stage Rokushiki, current Rain's speed, strength, and explosive power were all maxed out, and he already had the confidence to truly arm wrestle with top-tier powerhouses. Rain grabbed Nidai Kidetsu by the bedside and strode out of the wooden house. On the coast, the division members he newly recruited had long since assembled. This group of pirates all had fanatical gazes, rubbing their fists and wiping their palms waiting to do a big job. Let's go, board the ship. Rain didn't talk nonsense and took the lead walking toward the port. A huge pirate ship, resembling a war fortress, plowed forward through the waves. On the black sails, a striking red skull was painted, exuding a suffocating sense of oppression. Behind the large ship, two escort ships closely followed. Rox stood at the bow of the ship, his wild long hair fluttering in the wind. He crossed his arms, his gaze fixed intently on the gradually enlarging outline of the island on the horizon ahead. Golden Lion, John, and other executives successively drew their weapons, their eyes filled with a bloodthirsty gleam. At the island's port, one could already faintly see the luxury cruise ship of the Celestial Dragons, as well as the giant warships parked beside it. Full speed to the shore. Prepare to make a move. Rox roared, then turned to look at Rain, take some people and stay on the ship to be responsible for coordination, and support at any time if the situation goes wrong. Understood. Rain nodded in agreement, his palm resting on the hilt of the Nidai Kidetsu. Meanwhile, on the lookout tower of the warship at the island's port, a marine scout holding a telescope was frightened pale, his whole body trembling wildly. In his field of vision, a huge pirate ship flying a red skull flag was charging straight over like a primordial ferocious beast. Standing at the bow were all monsters that terrified people across the vast sea. Enemy attack. The Rox pirates are attacking. The shrill alarm instantly spread throughout the entire port. The two celestial dragons who had just looted the heavenly tribute in the country and were preparing to board the ship to leave were scared out of their wits, frantically fleeing in a blind panic under the escort of guards. However, three marine generals in the crowd appeared exceptionally calm. Sengoku, Zephyr, and Suru. Because the undercover agent had transmitted intelligence in advance, Marineford had long made foolproof preparations, specifically waiting here for Rox to walk right into the trap. Quickly transfer the celestial dragons and the heavenly tribute onto the ship. Sengoku's muscles tensed all over, and he roared at the surrounding soldiers. Afterwards, Sengoku's gaze locked tightly onto the approaching pirate ship in the distance, a formidable aura bursting forth from his body. Zephyr, Suru. Follow me to meet the enemy. Today, we must absolutely not let Rox succeed. The elite marines hidden in the shadows of the port successively drew their weapons. Captain Rox, the marines really do have an ambush. John drew the scimitar from his waist, his expression solemn. As soon as the pirate ship sailed into the port, dense masses of marines emerged from the island. Charge over. Slaughter the celestial dragons first. Rox roared, a violent aura sweeping out like a primordial ferocious beast. Feeling this fierce pressure, the surrounding executives all felt palpitations. Rain stood to the side, his expression very calm, but inwardly he marveled secretly. As expected of the overlord of the seas, his aura alone could deter all heroes. However, Rain's conqueror's haki had now also reached a profound realm, completely unaffected. Regardless of whether they are prepared or not, kill. At Rox's command, the executives rushed toward the island like fierce tigers descending the mountain. Sengoku. We didn't finish fighting last time, let's continue today. Whitebeard Newgate let out a big laugh, wielding the Murakumogiri, and dashed straight over with a majestic aura. Whitebeard, it's not yet certain who will end up flat on the ground today. Sengoku violently tore off the justice cloak behind him and loosened his tie. Suru in the rear retreated to the side of the guards, her gaze, however, locked tightly onto Rox on the pirate ship and Rain beside him. He is that monster rookie Rain from the undercover rumors. Suru frowned deeply. A monster who could learn a special move just by looking at it was definitely a huge threat. On the coast, a chaotic battle erupted instantly. Executives like Whitebeard, Golden Lion, Silver Axe, and John directly engaged the marine generals in battle. Rain stood at the bow of the ship, carefully observing the situation on the battlefield. He quickly discovered something was amiss. Aside from Sengoku and Zephyr, the remaining few marine vice-admirals were clearly a large cut weaker in strength than the executives. Moreover, the number of ordinary marine soldiers wasn't even as many as the members of the pirate divisions. With just this amount of military force, they still wanted to escort the celestial dragons and the heavenly tribute. Rain muttered a sentence, and turned to glance at Rox. Rox evidently also saw through the situation, but he crossed his arms, his gaze deep and fathomless, with no intention of making a move, seemingly waiting for the Marines' backup plan. In the center of the battlefield, holding the Murakumogiri, Whitebeard slashed towards Sengoku with a single blade. Sengoku erupted with formidable armament haki all over his body, meeting the blade's edge head-on with a punch. Boom! Air waves exploded, and the ground beneath their feet shattered layer by layer. Sengoku, you've improved quite a bit. Whitebeard's arm muscles bulged, and a dazzling white halo condensed at the tip of his blade. Crack! Accompanied by the crisp sound of space shattering, a violent force of vibration instantly erupted, completely overturning the ground beneath Sengoku's feet. Dust and smoke rolled all around. Admiral Sengoku. Soldiers in the distance cried out in alarm, thinking Sengoku had suffered a loss. Don't get cocky, Newgate. An angry roar came from the ruins. Immediately following, boundless golden light shot straight into the clouds. A huge, pure gold Buddha appeared in the center of the battlefield, solemn and sacred, exuding a suffocating sense of oppression. Zone, human fruit, mythical model, Daibutsu. Gururara, this is more like it. Whitebeard's fighting spirit grew increasingly intense in his eyes, his left hand suddenly clenching into a fist as he threw a punch from afar sideways toward the giant Buddha Sengoku. The air was covered in cracks like glass, and a heaven-destroying shockwave surged out wildly. Sengoku, transformed into the giant Buddha, didn't back down in the slightest. His huge golden palm pushed forward fiercely, and a dazzling shockwave collided head-on with the power of vibration. Boom! The two heaven-destroying forces crashed together resoundingly, the entire island shaking violently, and soil and gravel were blasted soaring into the sky. On the other side, the battlefield of Golden Lion Shiki and Black Arm Zephyr had already shifted to the airspace above the sea surface. Shiki used the ability of the float fruit to levitate midair, waving Sakuraden and Kogarashi with both hands, launching a fierce, tempest-like onslaught against Zephyr below. Zephyr stepped on the air with both feet, emitting a muffled sonic boom. Relying on the Roku Shiki, moonwalk, he flexibly dodged in the air, his arms covered in pitch-black armament haki as he continuously withstood Shiki's slash attacks head-on. Lion's threat. See roll. Shiki let out a wild laugh, waving his dual blades across the air. The seawater below instantly boiled, transforming into several giant water lions that opened their bloody maws and bit toward Zephyr. Zephyr was in midair, his flexibility restricted, and was instantly swallowed by the violent seawater, trapped inside a huge sphere of water. Severing waves. Seizing the opportunity, Shiki slashed out with his dual blades in rapid succession. Dense golden sword chi whistled as it slashed toward the water sphere. Bang! The huge water sphere exploded resoundingly. Zephyr, whose entire body was covered in armament haki, forcibly tore open the water curtain, pushing through the sky-filling sword chi, and stepped on the moonwalk to rapidly close in on Shiki. Rain, standing at the bow of the ship watching the battle, only felt his blood boiling. This was the battle of the world's top-tier powerhouses, possessing the terrifying power to alter terrain with every gesture. At the same time, the system notification sounds in his mind began to spam wildly. Ding! Your Kongyan sword slash observed the original owner's full power outbreak. Comprehension deepened. Current progress. Peak stage 35%. Ding! Your lion's severing waves immersed itself in fierce slaughter and was very excited. Current progress. Peak stage 20%. Rain grinned broadly, gaining experience wildly without having to move a finger himself. It was simply freaking awesome. Ding! Your armament haki is progressing by leaps and bounds in the top-tier battlefield. Current progress. 99.97% of the mastery stage. Ding! Your observation haki has sensed various top-tier auras clashing, successfully breaking through the bottleneck. Current progress. 1% of the peak stage. Ding! Your conqueror's haki is exceptionally excited amidst the fierce slaughter, and your cultivation speed has skyrocketed. Current progress. 99.99% of the mastery stage. A series of crisp notification sounds rang frantically in Rain's mind. Observation haki even crossed the threshold directly, stepping into the top tier, peak, stage. Armament haki and Haoshoku were just a step away. Rain clenched his fists, feeling in a very good mood. He shifted his gaze toward the island. The battlefield had long since turned into a meat grinder. Silver Axe waved his giant axe flashing with lightning, suppressing the opposing marine general firmly. John held a scimitar and a flintlock, relying on insidious moves to beat the enemy into consecutive retreats. The newly minted monsters Kaido and Charlotte Linlin were shining brilliantly. Kaido swung a huge club, letting out a roar that shook the heavens, rampaging through the marine formation, and finally forcing a vice admiral of the giant race from Marineford to step in and barely block his pace. Charlotte Linlin brandished a giant sword, resembling an enraged lioness, slaughtering several elite swordsmen into utter disarray. The Marines resisted desperately. Once their defense line was torn apart, the celestial dragons in the rear would undoubtedly die. High up in the air, the battle was equally tragic. Is this all the strength your slash has? Zephyr's arms were covered in pitch-black armament haki, forcefully shattering the Golden Lion's golden sword aura as he sneered mockingly. Before his voice faded, another even more ferocious sword aura came whistling through the air, directly splitting Zephyr and sending him flying backwards, smashing heavily onto the rocks on the coastline. Don't get carried away, Zephyr. Shiki bit down on his cigar, his face full of displeasure. How dare someone mock his swordsmanship? Shiki's figure rapidly spiraled in midair, holding his famed blades with a reverse grip, swooping down toward Zephyr on the ground like a hunting falcon. The formidable oppressive force made people suffocated. Zephyr had just crawled out of the rubble pit when he ran head-on into Shiki's fatal slash. The distance was too close, making it impossible to dodge. He clenched his teeth, preparing to fight to the death and take it head-on. At this critical juncture, an extremely agile figure burst out from the side like lightning, kicking heavily into the descending Shiki. Boom! A dull thud of hand-to-hand combat rang out. Taken by surprise, Shiki flew backward like a cannonball out of a chamber, sliding all the way above the sea surface before barely stabilizing his posture. The ferocious gale stirred up huge waves on the sea surface. Rayleigh. Shiki widened his eyes, his expression sinking instantly. Why would the vice captain of the Roger pirates appear here? The battlefield situation changed in a split second, and Rain, standing at the bow of the ship watching the battle, also saw the newcomers clearly. With Rayleigh's appearance, Roger with a long sword tucked at his waist, Scopper Gabon holding dual axes, and several core elites of the Roger pirates walked out from the shadows one after another. Yo, Newgate. Roger grinned broadly, and his very first action was to greet Whitebeard who was in fierce combat. Roger. What kind of trouble are you guys running over to meddle in? Whitebeard let out an angry shout. Although the two had a good personal relationship, Roger running out at this time clearly meant he was standing on the side of the Marine to deal with the Rock's pirates. Of course it's to stop that lunatic Rox. Roger abruptly drew the famed blade, Ace, from his waist, locking his gaze firmly onto Rox in the distance. Whitebeard's eyes flickered slightly, asking no more, and he turned around to continue fighting Sengoku. However, anyone with discerning eyes could tell that the actions of these two were obviously half a beat slower than before, and they both began to slack off silently while observing the situation. The Marine soldiers were completely bewildered. Pirates actually ran over to help the Marines fight pirates. Ignore the Roger pirates. Concentrate firepower to rout the people of Rocks. Vice Admiral Suru held up a Den Den Mushi, shouting instructions aloud. As soon as she finished speaking, Suru's pupils suddenly constricted. Rocks moved. His figure instantly vanished from where he stood, resembling a primeval fierce beast as he wielded a long sword and charged straight toward Vice Admiral Suru's location. Protect Vice Admiral Suru. Sengoku and Zephyr were greatly alarmed. A beautiful lady must not be frightened by you. A terrifying slash carrying dark red haki tore through the air, forcefully cutting off Rock's path. Roger blocked in front of Rocks. Roger, you've been quite prominent these past few years. The current you is qualified to be called a great pirate. Rocks' tone was calm as the long sword in his hand swung out fiercely. Rumble. Two top-tier famed blades collided with a roar. Black and red Haoshoku lightning crazily intertwined and exploded, turning into countless lightning serpents raging in all directions. Gale force winds howled, and the earth collapsed. With his own strength, Rocks directly took on several top-tier powerhouses like Roger and Gabon, not falling behind in the slightest. The celestial dragons are escaping. Amidst the chaos, the sharp-eyed John suddenly shouted out. In the distance, two celestial dragons wearing spacesuit-like attire were being escorted by a group of elite guards, fleeing panically toward a docked luxury cruise ship. Kill them all. The pirate officers let out bloodthirsty roars, pushing forward frantically. Don't even think about getting past. Sengoku roared angrily, his palms bursting with dazzling shockwaves. Gururara, Sengoku, your opponent is me. The slacking Whitebeard slashed the shockwave apart with a single blade, blocking in front of Sengoku. On the other side, the Golden Lion Shiki fell into the dual siege of Rayleigh and Zephyr, fighting to a standstill. Rain stood on the pirate ship, taking everything in at a glance. The only one in the Rocks pirates who hadn't made a move yet was him, who was responsible for rendezvous and support. On the surface, the battle situation looked extremely deadlocked. Rocks' strength was indeed suffocatingly powerful, but the trio of Roger, Gabon, and Bullet were likewise monster-level existences. Under the trio's tacit cooperation, even Rocks could not break through in a short time. The other officers, including Whitebeard Newgate and Golden Lion Shaki, were all separated across various parts of the battlefield. The strong intervention of the Roger pirates happened to fill the vacancy of the Marines in top-tier combat power. The Marines indeed had a premeditated plan. Rain calculated inwardly. As long as the officers were firmly dragged down, the Marines would have enough time to escort the celestial dragons to board the ship and escape. In the center of the island, the slaughter between ordinary crew members and Marine soldiers was even more tragic. The people of the Rocks pirates were desperate outlaws who licked blood from the blades, willing to throw away their lives just to climb higher. This fierce fighting style made many young Marine soldiers feel a chill in their hearts. They're escaping. Seeing the celestial dragons getting closer and closer to the luxury cruise ship, John roared anxiously, frantically swinging his scimitar in an attempt to shake off the Marine Vice Admiral in front of him. Don't waste your effort, you won't get past. The Marine Vice Admiral clenched his teeth, shattering John's path with a single sword slash, blocking firmly in front. You guys who act as dogs for the celestial dragons. John was furious beyond control. On the other side, Whitebeard Newgate also noticed the movements of the celestial dragons. Sweeping with the corner of his eye, the Murakumogiri in his hand suddenly burst out with extremely ferocious vibrational power, forcefully pushing Sengoku back several steps in his Buddha form. Following that, Newgate turned around swiftly, the muscles in his left arm bulging high as a dazzling cluster of white halo frantically gathered on his fist. Ha! With a roar of fury, Newgate threw a punch through the air toward the direction of the celestial dragons. Crack! Crack! Accompanied by teeth-aching cracking sounds, the air throughout the entire space shattered explosively like glass. A terrifying vibrational crack spread along the ground at a destructive momentum rapidly toward the celestial dragons. The Marine soldiers and pirates along the way were all blown into midair by this irresistible force. Not good. Sengoku had just stabilized his figure and was greatly alarmed, but it was already too late to stop it. The violent vibration of the ground made the two celestial dragons turn their heads back. Looking at that terrifying crack that seemed as if it would tear apart the earth approaching rapidly, the two let out miserable screams of fright, flopping straight onto the ground in a sprawl, scrambling backward. A smile curled the corners of Whitebeard's mouth. Although this punch was from a far distance, it was definitely enough to vibrate those two pieces of trash to death. Don't even think about succeeding. At the critical moment, Zephyr, whose whole body was covered in pitch-black armament hockey, rushed out rapidly from the side like a black meteor, crossing his arms and propping them firmly against the very front of the vibrational crack. Rumble. The violent force of vibration exploded fiercely before Zephyr, the ground cracking inch by inch, and dust soaring into the sky. You're really in the way, Zephyr. Whitebeard snorted dismissively with dissatisfaction, and could only turn around to continue engaging Sengoku, who was lunging forward once more. Zephyr had just stubbornly withstood an attack and hadn't even had time to catch his breath when the earth beneath his feet suddenly rolled and twisted, transforming into a huge earthen lion that opened its bloody maw to bite at him. Shiki Waki. Earth roll. Golden Lion Shiki, who was held back by Rayleigh, was filled with anger. Fighting with me, and you still dare to get distracted to block Whitebeard's attack. What an absolute humiliation. Shiki, you mustn't look around aimlessly during a battle. Rayleigh held a long sword and rapidly closed in. The three of them fell into a melee once more. Ren, standing on the pirate ship, watched with boiling blood. This kind of top-level combat that altered terrain and destroyed heaven and earth was simply art. Right at this moment. Ding! Your conqueror's hockey sensed the extremely violent combat atmosphere, went completely wild, and successfully broke through the bottleneck. Current progress. 2% of the peak stage. Ding! Your armament hockey was deeply inspired by the clashes of top powerhouses and broke through strongly. Current progress. 5% of the peak stage. Ding! Your Rokushiki broke through physical shackles due to the host's boiling blood, advancing to a brand new realm. Current progress. 1% of the limit stage. 3 crisp notification sounds exploded consecutively in Ren's mind. Immediately following that, Ren felt an unprecedented, terrifying power surge within his body. His muscles, bones, and even his blood were cheering and leaping with joy. The three-color hockey had all stepped into the peak stage. This meant that, solely in terms of hockey quality and technique, the current Ren truly possessed the capital to compete on the same stage with Roger, Rox, Whitebeard, and others. Ren took a deep breath, forcefully suppressing the excitement in his heart, and continued to observe the battlefield. The celestial dragons had scrambled over to the wooden stairs, and were about to board the ship. Right at this critical moment, Kaido and Charlotte Linlin erupted simultaneously, each pushing back their opponents, and rushed frantically toward the celestial dragons with endless killing intent. The executives were held back, but the Marines, powerhouses, couldn't free themselves either. As long as these two monster rookies rushed over, the remaining ordinary guards wouldn't be worth mentioning at all. Roar. Kaido let out an earth-shaking roar, his figure instantly soaring, and amidst a blue light, he transformed into a gigantic azure dragon that blotted out the sky. His pitch-black mane fluttered in the wind, and his dragon eyes, as large as lanterns, emitted a tyrannical and ferocious glare. A dragon? Is that a dragon? Everyone present was stunned by this scene. Even Roger, Whitebeard, Rox, and others couldn't help glancing sideways. The mythical zone, Azure Dragon form revealed its true face on the open sea for the first time. Kaido laughed wildly in excitement, his huge dragon body spiraling in midair, ignoring the Marines, gunfire below, and charging straight at the celestial dragons. Charlotte Linlin below saw this and snorted with dissatisfaction. She grabbed the pink hat on her head, which instantly transformed into a pitch-black thundercloud. Zeus stepped on the thundercloud to ascend rapidly, and closely followed behind Kaido. These two rookies are a bit interesting. Rox slashed open Bullet's combined armor with a single blade and laughed arrogantly. Roger and the others had calm expressions, they weren't interested in the lives or deaths of the celestial dragons at all. However, Ren's observation haki sensed a hint of something amiss. Sengoku watched Kaido and Linlin rushing over. Although his expression was ugly, he wasn't as panicked as when Whitebeard had attacked earlier. Not only Sengoku, but the reactions of the other marine generals were also abnormal. Foolish scum, go die. Kaido, transformed into an azure dragon, hovered above the celestial dragons' heads, his mouth already beginning to condense a destructive blast breath. Monsters. Don't come over. What are you useless marines good for? Come protect me quickly. The two celestial dragons were frightened out of their wits, sprawling on the ground and screaming wildly. Ikoku. Charlotte Linlin leapt down, her huge long sword enveloped in violent haki, carrying a piercing howl that tore through the air, fiercely slashing toward the celestial dragons. The surrounding armored guards were already scared stupid and didn't even have the courage to draw their swords. At the exact moment when the long sword was about to split the celestial dragons in half, a hulking figure catapulted out from the warship like a cannonball, instantly tearing through the air and appearing in front of Charlotte Linlin. Bang! With a deafening muffled sound, Charlotte Linlin's massive body was actually forcefully smashed into the hard rock ground, creating a huge deep crater. The wild smile on Rox's face instantly vanished, his gaze turning solemn like never before. Iron Fist. Garp. Just as Charlotte Linlin was smashed into the pit, the destructive blast breath spewed from Kaido's mouth was already closing in on the fleeing celestial dragons. A strong figure wearing a white short-sleeved shirt with slightly dark skin pushed against the scorching flames and surged upstream. Pitch-black armament haki tightly wrapped around his fists. Garp roared angrily, forcefully tearing the huge pillar of fire in half. His figure pierced through the flames and punched fiercely onto the azure dragon's forehead. A visible shockwave rippled out explosively. Kaido let out a miserable scream, his massive dragon body plunging to the ground like a kite with a broken string, smashing up a sky full of dust and smoke. His huge dragon eyes rolled back directly. He had actually been dazed by a single punch, and his body uncontrollably reverted to its human form. It's Vice Admiral Garp. The Marines who had narrowly escaped death cheered excitedly. With Vice Admiral Garp making a move, the celestial dragons' lives were considered saved. On the pirates' side, the atmosphere instantly became extremely oppressive. Kaido clutched his club, shook his throbbing head, and stood up gritting his teeth. Charlotte Linlin also crawled out from the pit, blood spilling from the corner of her mouth, her face full of terror. With just a single punch, both monster rookies were injured. Rox gripped his hilt tightly, his brow furrowed deeply. The Marine faction had gathered Sengoku, Zephyr, Garp, along with a host of generals. And there was the Roger pirates stirring up trouble on the side. Even if everyone gave it their all, at best it would be a draw, and there would be no chance left to kill the celestial dragons. Silver Axe shrank his neck in fright. He had once been hunted all the way by Garp, and his heart was full of shadows. Vice Admiral Suru in the rear had a calm expression and spoke loudly. To guard against emergencies, I specifically had Garp stay on the warship behind. Although he hates the celestial dragons, he will never violate the justice of the Marines. Rox, your ship has truly recruited quite a few monsters. What a scheming woman. Rox burned with fury, shouting loudly at Garp. Monkey D. Garp. Bearing the name of D, is this how you act as someone else's dog? First I'm a Marine. You are pirates. Garp clenched his fists tightly, roaring through gritted teeth. To deal with these lawless thugs before him, there was simply no need for idle chatter. Seeing that the mission was about to fail, the pirate executives were pondering how to retreat. Just as everything was about to be settled, a figure of astonishing speed flashed out of thin air directly above the celestial dragons. The speed was so fast that even Garp, not far away, failed to notice it in advance. Ren. John and Silver Axe widened their eyes with expressions of having seen a ghost. Rox also looked toward midair in surprise. Ren in midair was expressionless, his right hand abruptly drawing the Nadai Kidetsu at his waist. Violent blue lightning gathered crazily on the blade. Immediately following that, pitch-black armament hockey and dark red conqueror's hockey intertwined, instantly wrapping tightly around the entire blade. The destructive slashing stance directly locked onto the two celestial dragons below. Not good. Garp's eyes split with rage as he sprinted back like a madman. The guarding men in black were frightened out of their wits, shouting desperately to run fast. The two celestial dragons looked up at Ren in midair, crackling with lightning and surging with hockey, completely scared stupid, their legs going weak so they couldn't budge an inch. Ren didn't say a word, his arms swinging down fiercely. Blending Kongyan sword slash, Thunder silver sword slash, Lion severing waves, +2 top-level hockey, the dark red giant blade aura descended explosively like divine punishment. Garp couldn't make it in time to rescue them even with all his might. Sengoku, Zephyr, and others had their eye sockets splitting. Boom. Dazzling red light swallowed everything. The hard rock ground, along with the two celestial dragons, was instantly vaporized completely by the terrifying blade aura, not even having time to let out a scream before turning straight into flying ash across the sky. The violent thunder and sword chi slashed through the earth, and the seawater in the rear poured back frantically. The celestial dragons were dead. Slain on the spot in front of all the Marines. Garp, who had just arrived, was boiling with rage, slamming his feet hard against the ground and charging toward Ren, who was falling down. His pitch-black iron fist, carrying a violent power that destroyed everything, smashed over fiercely. Facing Garp's heaven-destroying fist, Ren rapidly twisted his body in midair. His arm muscles bulged high, and his hands tightly gripped the kidetsu wrapped in Conqueror's hockey, slashing straight against the iron fist fiercely. The blade and the iron fist collided across the space. Black-red Conqueror's hockey lightning exploded fiercely between the two of them, forming a huge sphere of energy. The two of them locked their gazes onto each other intensely. A deafening explosion resounded through the sky. The violent shockwave blasted both of them apart simultaneously. Ren used the reaction force to continuously flip in the air, landing steadily on the bow of the pirate ship. After landing, Garp crushed a large area of rocks, his face as dark as the bottom of a pot. The entire scene was dead silent. Marine soldiers were filled with terror. There was actually someone in the Rocks pirates who could withstand Garp's punch head-on. Whitebeard, Golden Lion, Silver Axe, and others were so shocked their jaws almost dropped to the ground. Slaughtering the celestial dragons right in front of Garp, and surviving a head-on clash with Garp unscathed. This fooling rookie who just boarded the ship a month ago. Even in Rox's eyes, a thick look of shock flashed. No matter what, he couldn't have imagined that in just a few dozen days, Ren's strength had actually expanded to this realm. Roger and the others were likewise full of shock. There was simply no such figure in the intelligence reports. Ren. Sengoku's eyes were bloodshot, biting his teeth until they shattered. Vice Admiral Suru in the rear stared fixedly at Ren standing on the bow, an unprecedented sense of crisis rising in her heart. An apprentice who couldn't even use Haki a little over a month ago now actually possessed the combat power to clash head-on with Garp. If he were allowed to continue living, he would definitely become a world-class disaster even more terrifying than Rox. The death of the celestial dragons was an indelible, ultimate humiliation for the Marines. Today, the pirates must pay with a bloody price. Rox. Garp let out a roar, charging wildly toward the pirate faction once more. Ren carried his blade, gazing calmly down at the battlefield. The crisp notification sound rang out in his mind right on time. Ding! Observing a top-level physical combat powerhouse unleash their full power, heaven-defying comprehension triggered. Congratulations, host. Successfully comprehended the ultimate skill, Iron Fist. With my Haki level reaching the peak stage, I can learn these moves that utilize Haki during clashes. Ryan was ecstatic. Trading blows head-on with Garp not only allowed him to learn Garp's signature martial arts, but the growth rate of his martial arts and Haki multiplied several times over during the battle. He simply glanced at the panel and continued to focus on the battlefield situation. Although Roger, Gabon, and Bullet were formidable in strength and joined forces to besiege Rox, they ultimately couldn't hold on for long. Showing even a slight opening, they were slashed back by Rox with a single strike. At this moment, Garp also rushed over like a madman. Looking at the top powerhouses surrounding him, Rox wore a solemn expression. These two fellows were not easy to deal with. However, today's objective of killing the celestial dragons had already been achieved, so there was no need to fight to the death. Lads, the objective has been achieved. Retreat. Completely ignoring Roger's entanglement and Garp charging over, Rox flashed his figure and directly put some distance between them. The pirates erupted into a deafening cheer. Killing a celestial dragon in front of so many high-ranking Marine officials felt simply amazing. On the Marine side, everyone's expressions were so gloomy that water could drip from them. Sengoku and Whitebeard Newgate distanced themselves from each other. Sengoku, are we still fighting? Guru la la la. Whitebeard laughed twice and turned to leave. Sengoku gritted his teeth and said nothing. Golden Lion Shiki glanced at the battle situation and shouted at Zephyr and Rayleigh. Gia ha ha ha, let's call it a day here, Zephyr, Rayleigh. Finished speaking, he activated the float fruit ability and directly rose into the air and flew away. Zephyr's face was ashen, with nothing he could do. Garp was incomparably furious, taking large strides to frantically pursue Rox who was retreating with wild laughter. Stop chasing, Garp. You can't keep them here, treat the wounded first. Vice Admiral Suru dissuaded him loudly with helplessness. Things had reached this point, chasing after them was meaningless, and even if they caught up, they wouldn't necessarily win in a fight. The Marines had no heart to continue fighting, and the pirates quickly retreated. 7 cadres including Golden Lion, Whitebeard, Silver Axe, and John successively returned to the ship. The division members also retreated like a tide. Marine soldiers had fire spitting from their eyes, staring fixedly at the departing pirate ship, and could only stop their steps under the commander's orders. Everyone in the Roger pirates looked at each other and quickly evacuated the battlefield. Who knew if this group of Marines holding a belly full of fire would vent their anger on them? Sengoku, Suru, Zephyr, and Garp gathered together. No one can bear the responsibility for what happened today. Suru sighed deeply. Who could have thought that a newly emerging newcomer, Ryan, would grow to such a stage in such a short time? Let's prepare to go to Mary Geoise together to confess our crimes. A Marine Vice Admiral shook his head helplessly. The only thing worth rejoicing over was that the heavenly tribute was completely undamaged. Save the people first. Let the higher-ups worry about the matters of the Rox pirates. Sengoku patted Garp's shoulder. He knew very well that Garp was not angry about the death of the celestial dragons, but rather angry that he couldn't forcefully keep Ryan. Compared to the gloom of the Marines, Rox's ship was filled with joy and celebration. How bad luck, the Marines actually transferred the heavenly tribute in advance. As soon as John went ashore, he went to loot treasures, but ended up coming up empty. However, two arrogant celestial dragons paid with their lives. Ryan, you kid really hide your abilities well, becoming this strong in such a short time, he. John's face was full of envy. When strength reached the level of Whitebeard and Golden Lion, who wouldn't be red-eyed with envy? Ryan did a great job today, personally slaying a celestial dragon, you take the primary credit. Rox was in a great mood, making no effort to conceal the appreciation in his eyes. Everyone looked at Ryan with admiring gazes. The cadres completely changed their views, and no one dared to question Ryan's position anymore. Kaido and Charlotte Linlin sat to one side, silent. Their performance today was indeed eye-catching, but compared to Ryan, the gap was simply too huge, leaving a very bitter taste in their hearts. Gia ha ha ha, brother Ryan, when we go back and hold a banquet, everyone must toast you properly. Shiki bit on his cigar, sitting on the ship's rail and shouting. No problem, I am definitely not afraid of you guys when it comes to drinking matches. Holding the Nadai Kitetsu, Ryan sat next to Whitebeard. Guru la la la, don't speak too early. Whitebeard was originally a bit depressed about not grabbing any treasure, but as soon as he heard about drinking, his spirits rose again. Rox also casually praised Kaido and Linlin, then crossed his arms, seemingly pondering the next step of the plan. At this moment, Silver Axe couldn't help asking, Ryan, what was the ultimate technique you used to kill the celestial dragon just now called? It was somewhat like Thunder Silver Sword Slash, but completely different. This question instantly attracted the attention of everyone present. Whitebeard, Golden Lion, Rox, Kaido, and Big Mom all looked over. The fatal strike Ryan had just slashed out was nothing short of unbeatable in power, momentum, and activation speed. I call it, Form 1, Dragon Slayer. Ryan smiled and directly stated the name. These techniques were all learned from them, so there was nothing to hide. As soon as his voice fell, the system prompt tone rang out. Ding! Your self-created move has been activated in the system. Form 1, Dragon Slayer. Current progress, 80% of the peak stage. It merges Kongyan Sword Slash, Severing Waves, Thunder Silver Sword Slash, and the advanced Haki taught by the captain. Because the first one I slayed was a celestial dragon, I named it Dragon Slayer. Ryan casually explained. Too strong, what a genius. Silver Axe's face was full of envy. He risked his life just to comprehend a little bit of the surface, yet Ryan was able to master all the ultimate arts. Everyone exclaimed in admiration, repeatedly praising the name as domineering. Kaido, sitting in the corner, however, twitched his mouth, his expression extremely odd. Dragon Slayer. He had just eaten the Azure Dragon fruit. A few days later, the pirate ship successfully returned to Hashinosu Island, and a grand celebration banquet vigorously unfolded. Meanwhile, Sengoku and the others far away in Mary Geoise faced a completely opposite and miserable plight. Holy Land Mary Geoise, inside the Room of Authority. Two esteemed celestial dragons have been murdered. What on earth are you Marines good for? An elderly man in a black suit with blonde hair and a beard roared furiously. The expressions of the four other authorities beside him were equally livid. The celestial dragons were violently murdered right in front of so many powerful Marines, and the noble families of Mary Geoise would definitely not let the matter rest. This responsibility was simply too heavy. Sengoku, Zephyr, and Vice Admiral Suru stood before these five highest authorities, able only to silently endure the scolding that poured down on them. The Marine represents the face of the world government, and today that face has been completely disgraced. Things have already reached this point, and simply yelling at the Marine is of no use. Another elderly man spoke with a gloomy face. The threat of the Rox pirates has completely exceeded our control, and even the world government wouldn't dare act rashly right now. Then there are the few newcomers who have recently surfaced. One ate the soul fruit, and one transformed into an azure dragon. The most terrifying one is the newcomer named Rain. Whether it's hockey or a fatal killer move, he can perfectly replicate it just by looking at it once. He's an absolute monster through and through. The five authorities chimed in one after another, their tone gradually shifting from initial anger to deep apprehension toward the Rock's pirates. Not only were veteran powerhouses as numerous as clouds under rocks, but now even newcomers had displayed world-destroying potential. Once these monsters were allowed to grow completely, the consequences would be unimaginable. Two celestial dragons from the upper-tier families have died. This matter cannot be easily settled. The leading elderly man tapped his cane. The Marine cannot escape blame this time. Everything will be decided 3 months later, after mourning the deceased at God Valley. Put a bounty on all newcomers who participated in the attack. As for the swordsman named Rain, set his initial bounty at 800 million berries. The five directly issued their final orders to Sengoku and the other two. The dead could not be brought back to life, and the world government still needed the Marine to maintain surface-level order. After heavily reprimanding them, they could only chalk this matter up for now. Sengoku and the other two walked out of the room of authority, only then letting out a long breath of relief. They had been scolded inside for a full half hour, and the sense of oppression was palpable. In the end, this is the only way to handle it. Zephyr shrugged indifferently. Getting chewed out was nothing. At most, it would only affect future promotion speeds. Sengoku's brows were tightly locked, a ball of fire pent up in his heart. Regarding the deaths of the celestial dragons, the Marine truly cannot shirk responsibility. Clearly there were so many officers present, and the Roger pirates also stepped in to hold back rocks, yet in the end, they still let the pirates succeed. What angered Sengoku was that the celestial dragons were completely powerless, yet they insisted on running into dangerous areas to throw their lives away. Alright, right now we should be considering how to deal with rocks. Vice Admiral Suru interrupted Sengoku's complaints, changing the subject. Rain, the newly promoted officer in the pirate crew, his growth rate is simply too astonishing. In just a few dozen days, he could take a punch from Garp head-on and retreat unscathed. Suru's meaning was very clear. Rain definitely could not be left alive. An 800 million bounty was even set too low, based solely on his strength to withstand Garp head-on. He far exceeded that figure. Wanting to eliminate a genius with infinite potential in Rox's base camp, unless Marineford mobilizes in full force with the fleet admiral leading personally. Zephyr shook his head helplessly. Hearing these words, all three fell into silence. When all was said and done, the existence of Rox was still like an insurmountable mountain. Just as the high-ranking Marine officials were full of worry, the news of the Rox pirates violently killing the celestial dragons, along with Rain's wanted poster, swept across the entire world like a hurricane. In the recruit training camp of Marineford, 3 young Marines praised as monsters, Kuzan, Sakazuki, and Borsellino, were looking at the intelligence in their hands with looks of utter astonishment. All 3 of them had eaten top-tier Logia devil fruits, and their strength far surpassed that of their peers. Teacher, to think there are such monsters with heaven-defying comprehension on the great seas, it really gives one a headache. Can we be sure it's not some kind of special devil fruit ability? The pirates are truly becoming more and more rampant. The 3 looked at each other in dismay, and even Zephyr, who was responsible for teaching them, silently shook his head. Not only the Marine, but all factions on the Grand Line were shaken. Sabayati Archipelago. Big news. Big news. The Rox pirates have provoked the world government once again, slaughtering celestial dragons in public. A news coup was shouting loudly in the sky. The front page of the newspaper printed a clear photo of Rain standing at the bow of the ship, drawing his blade to execute a celestial dragon. No one knew how the war correspondent managed to capture such a shocking scene. The pirates and bar patrons on the island gathered together, drawing sharp breaths as they looked at the newspaper. In a secluded tavern, a man wearing a purplish-red shirt with golden braids was sitting alone at the bar drinking, with a black bat umbrella leaning beside him. He was none other than the lone Red who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Roger and Whitebeard by his own strength alone, Patrick Redfield. He quietly listened to the exclamations of the surrounding patrons. 800 million berries. Rain, the newly promoted officer of the Rocks Pirates, actually has an initial bounty as high as 800 million. Not only can he learn other people's moves just by looking at them once, but he also fought Vice Admiral Garp to a standstill. The Rocks Pirates were already invincible, and now with such a monster officer added to their ranks, who will be able to mess with them in the future? Redfield raised his wine glass, his deep gaze falling on the photo of Rain in the newspaper. Rain. Interesting. The corner of the Lone Red's mouth curved slightly upward. He had previously crossed swords with several officers of the Rocks Pirates and knew full well the weight of an officer's seat. For a newcomer to be able to sit in that position, they definitely had some real skills. Meanwhile, on a desolate island in the North Blue, several mysterious people draped in cloaks were sitting around a campfire, holding the latest newspapers in their hands as well. Ha 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 ha. Well done. The Rocks Pirates have slaughtered 2 more celestial dragon scum. A cloaked figure cheered loudly, their tone revealing an unhideable sense of gratification. They were the early revolutionaries who had gathered together precisely to overthrow the rule of the celestial dragons. Everyone felt deeply gratified by the deaths of the celestial dragons. Only a young figure standing right at the front stared solemnly at Rain in the newspaper. Dragon, what is it? A companion asked doubtfully. The young monkey D. Dragon shook his head and said in a deep voice, the Rocks Pirates have gained another monster. Although everyone is fighting against the celestial dragons, Rocks and his crew are merely a mob of thugs wreaking havoc everywhere for the sake of desire and slaughter. They are by no means the path we want to walk. The death of the celestial dragons was indeed cathartic, but the expansion of the Rocks Pirates' influence would very likely become an obstacle to pursuing true freedom in the future. At this very moment, Rain, who was at the center of the topic, was sitting on the beach of Hashinosu, holding a large bowl of alcohol and clinking cups heartily with Whitebeard. As news of Ren's renown spreading across the seas traveled far and wide, the ships of the Rocks Pirates successfully returned to Hashinosu. Currently, Ren was in a fantastic mood. After experiencing a major battle, the attitude of the commanders had undergone a 180-degree turnaround. The veteran crew members bowed their heads one after another, no longer daring to harbor the slightest doubt, while the rest of the pirates cast gazes filled with awe. Strength was simply the best passport in the pirate world. What made Ren happiest was that even while the banquet was underway, his various abilities within his body were still rapidly improving. Taking advantage of a gap between eating big mouthfuls of meat, Ren summoned the system panel in his mind. Host. Ren. Conqueror's Hockey. Peak stage 38%, triple acceleration in progress. Armament Hockey. Peak stage 41%, triple acceleration in progress. Observation Hockey. Peak stage 43%, normal speed. Form 1. Dragon Slayer. Peak stage 80%, fused with Kongyan Sword / Lion Severing Waves, Thunder Silver Sword / Rokushiki. Limit stage 83%. Garp's Iron Fist. Mastery stage 30%. His strength had welcomed another wave of explosive growth. Ren grinned broadly in amusement. Under the blessing of triple acceleration, the progress of the 2 major hockey types was astonishing, almost catching up to the consistently leading observation hockey. The newly secretly learned Garp's Iron Fist was also steadily improving. As for the new move, Form 1, Dragon Slayer, it could not only be used on its own, but could also be split and released separately. It was simply perfect. Just as Ren was foolishly smiling at the panel, Golden Lion Shiki walked over carrying 2 large barrels of wine, insisting on drinking him under the table. Ren put away his thoughts and heartily started drinking with everyone. The banquet continued until late at night, and only then did everyone disperse to rest. Early the next morning, Rocks summoned a full meeting of the commanders. Beside the round table inside the giant skull rock, Whitebeard, Golden Lion, Silver Axe, John, and 4 others, plus the newly promoted Ren, all 9 corps commanders were present. Rocks crossed his arms, strode into the conference room, and said with a satisfied smile on his lips, Although the heavenly tribute wasn't successfully snatched, killing the celestial dragon's scum in public means the operation was a complete success. Everyone turned their heads to look at Ren one after another, smiles in their eyes. Ren had contributed the most by slaying the celestial dragons this time, and Rox was clearly extremely satisfied. Immediately following this, Rox changed the subject, his tone revealing undisguised killing intent. The Roger pirates actually dared to team up with the Marines to ambush us, they simply don't know whether they are living or dying. As the overlord of the seas, Rox absolutely would not allow anyone to provoke his majesty. As soon as these words came out, the commander's eyes sank, and everyone heard the subtext. The captain was preparing to make a move against Roger's crew. Daring to launch such a blatant strike meant that the two sides were going to war completely. Even Roger dares to step on our heads, we must wipe them out. A commander with a scimitar hanging at his waist, named Carey, loudly chimed in. John also pounded the table and cursed. If it weren't for this bunch of guys causing trouble, the heavenly tribute would have been ours long ago. Silver Axe nodded repeatedly in agreement. Among everyone present, only Whitebeard sat in his chair without saying a word. Just right, Ren made the top contribution this time, and according to the rules, it's time to allocate his commander territory. Rox looked at Ren and made his decision. Ren was slightly stunned, it was his first time hearing about commander territories. Every commander has an exclusive territory, which is a symbol of status and power. Golden Lion Shaki bit on his cigar and smiled as he explained. Previously, Ren's seniority was shallow and no one brought this up, but now with his battle record right before their eyes, allocating territory was naturally a matter of course. Hearing this, John became anxious. Captain, our territories were already carved up cleanly by the 8 of us long ago. You surely can't carve a piece out from our hands, right? Everyone burst into a wave of laughter. Everyone knew that John was greedy and stingy. Rox's gaze turned slightly cold as he stared at John. If there's no extra territory, can't we just go seize it? The Roger pirates have quite a bit of territory. This time we'll deploy our entire army and swallow up all of their territories. Ren's domain can be chosen from among them. The commanders instantly became excited. Conquering new territory meant gaining control of even more wealth and resources. Newgate, Shaki, Ren, the 3 of you come with me to strike straight at Roger's main base. Everyone else split up to sweep through their affiliated territories. I will make the Roger pirates pay a bloody price. Rox shouted his final command. Whitebeard and Golden Lion looked at each other in dismay. Seeing this stance, Rox intended to directly wipe the Roger pirates off the seas. Inside, however, Ren was blooming with joy. He was finally going to war on all fronts with the future Pirate King's crew. Roger's ship could be described as full of powerful experts. If he could take the opportunity to steal Roger's divine departure sword technique or Rayleigh's top-tier hockey, he would make an absolute killing. Do you still have any objections? Rox swept his gaze across the room. In fact, he knew very well in his heart that there must be Marine undercover agents inside the pirate crew. But he didn't point it out on the spot, because once brought up, the meeting would definitely turn into a farce of mutual tearing at each other's throats. This kind of matter could only be investigated secretly. Seeing the commanders shake their heads one after another, Rox dropped the line, rest well and prepare for war, then turned and walked out of the conference room. Once Rox left, the commander meeting officially ended, and everyone dispersed one after another. Rox sat alone in the highest room of Skull Rock, his gaze profound and deep. Whether it was spies from the world government or undercover agents from other pirate forces, they had to be ferreted out. Getting into a direct fallout during the meeting wasn't very wise, so Rox chose to release his terrifying observation hockey, silently covering the entire island and secretly monitoring every move of every commander. The short-statured commander with a scimitar at his waist, Carey, walked back to his own camp as usual. He seemed very unhappy with the meeting's result, calling over a few trusted subordinates and gulping down strong liquor in large mouthfuls. Rox's observation hockey locked tightly onto the camp, not letting go of even the slightest detail. John and the others below were also each seeking pleasure and making merry, while Whitebeard sat alone by the seaside, closing his eyes to rest and recuperate. Everything looked completely flawless. Night fell. Carrie drank himself into a complete stupor, wobbling even as he walked, and was eventually helped into his room by his subordinates. He collapsed heavily onto the bed, pulled the quilt over, and covered his head. Just when Rox thought Carrie had no suspiciousness and was preparing to shift his attention elsewhere, Carrie, hiding under the quilt, suddenly opened both eyes. Where was there any trace of drunkenness left in his gaze? A layer of invisible barrier imperceptible to the naked eye instantly unfolded with Carrie at the center, completely wrapping around the entire large bed. Paramesha type. Quiet fruit, awakened state. If an ordinary commander were nearby, their jaws would definitely drop in shock. Carrie had always hidden his devil fruit ability so thoroughly that not a single drop leaked out. Under the isolation of the awakened ability, no sound or aura could pass out. Even Rox's top-tier observation Haki couldn't perceive the slightest abnormality. Confirming it was safe, Carrie took out a miniature Den Den Mushi from his bosom. The first half of the Grand Line, Marineford. Inside the Fleet Admiral's office, a pure white Den Den Mushi in Kong's pocket rang urgently. "I am Kong." Kong answered the phone, his expression instantly turning extremely grave. This was an emergency contact made by the single-line undercover agent lurking within the upper echelons of the Rox pirates. "It's me." Carrie spoke in a lowered voice. "Contacting suddenly so late at night, is there any important intelligence?" Kong asked in a deep voice. "Hee, the Roger pirates ran over to meddle earlier. It was you Marines pulling strings behind the scenes, right?" Carrie let out a sinister laugh. "You risked exposure to contact headquarters just to ask this piece of nonsense." Kong's brows furrowed slightly, appearing somewhat impatient. That's the end of part 1. Part 2 is coming soon.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and support our channel for more stories.